Historically, the area that is today known as Black Swan Inn has been linked to a Native American tribe that goes back to 5,500 BCE. This connection stretches back to the historical period. In the year 1842, the territory served as the setting for a conflict that was waged between the forces of the Texas and those of the Mexican government. This was yet another attempt by Mexico to reclaim the territory that it had lost as a consequence of the Battle of San Jacinto. But, much like the previous efforts that had been made since 1836, this one was failed. The dairy farm that Heinrich Mahler, a German immigrant, created 35 years later, was situated on the same plot of land that he had purchased for $2,220 in the year 1887. Mahler, who had been mourning the death of his wife for 2 years, eventually gave in to his own sentiments of lovelessness 2 years later. This event brings about an unforeseen turn in the history of the house. The Holbrooks and the Woods family both made the purchase of the property not too much longer after that event. There were sisters who were married to each other in both families, and the whole group of them started their own company together. As soon as the renovations were finished, they decided to give the house the name White Gables. In addition, once Jolene Woods tied the knot with Hall Park Street, the pair took full ownership of White Gables throughout their marriage. Jolene was just 38 years old when she was struck by a dreadful disaster, which is a terrible circumstance. Cancer was the reason of her passing, and her husband was having a very tough time coming to terms with the loss of his wife and other family members. To the point that on August 5, 1965, he used a belt to hang himself from the poster that was connected to his bed. This was on account of the terrible degree of his depression. Even though there were speculations that Park Street's death was the result of a murder-related occurrence, the police came to the conclusion that it was a suicide. This was the official determination made by the authorities. It is unknown who it is that continues to linger at the Black Swan Inn. Is it Park Street, or could it be Mrs. Woods, Jolene's mother, who died dead in her chamber at the property due to the effects of old age? There is a great likelihood that both Park and Mrs. Woods are haunting the Black Swan Inn in Victoria. This is a spot where there is a high probability that both of them are haunting the area. In particular, one of the bedrooms that is situated on the top level has been cited by a number of visitors as the spot where they've seen ghosts. Other areas around the property have also been mentioned. There is a possibility that the ghost of a young woman may be seen sitting on the bed at that spot on occasion. Despite the fact that her last resting place was in one of the bedrooms located downstairs, those who have had the good fortune to establish eye contact with this female ghost often compare her to a younger version of Mrs. Woods. This is the case despite the fact that her passing occurred in one of the bedrooms. A significant number of individuals have reported experiencing a crushing and oppressive weight on their shoulders when they were in the area. Other paranormal phenomena that have been seen at the Black Swan Inn include temperature decreases that are obvious, noises that cannot be explained, and lights that are often turned off and on at strange intervals. All of these things have been observed. On the other hand, the presence of a man who has been seen walking about the house in a furious way is arguably the most unnerving spectral presence that has been observed at the location. It has been stated that he is the ghost of Hall Park Street, according to the tale that has been going around. Is it conceivable that he is looking for his beloved wife Jolene, whose spirit is also said to haunt the inn from time to time? This female spirit seems to walk about the property without any particular destination while dressed in a white robe. Yet, it appears that they never come into direct contact with one another. It would seem that their love continues to take distinct directions even after they have both departed away. There is a well-known fact that the ghosts who reside at Victoria's Black Swan Inn are just as active as the living people that stay there. In some circumstances, the ghostly boy is known to play practical jokes and throw tantrums. This is because the spirit of a child tends to behave in a manner that is only seen when there are actual children around. In modern times, the Black Swan Inn functions more as an event venue than a conventional inn. Yet, if you happen to be in the vicinity, you should not miss the opportunity to pay it a visit. Also, if you do happen to come across one of the numerous spirits that are now residing on the property, you should keep in mind that it is very unlikely that they would follow you back to your home. This is something you should keep in mind if you do happen to come across one of these spirits. Years leading up to 1924, Frank Lloyd Wright and his son were collaborating on projects in Los Angeles. At that time, the elder Wright expressed his dissatisfaction with the present situation. "You are still young enough to be able to own Los Angeles." It was Wright Jr.'s goal to establish himself as a prominent figure in the industry by creating sets for Hollywood productions and infusing the Mayan revival look into his father's works. When he was given the opportunity to construct the Sowden house in 1926 by his friend John Sowden, who was a photographer, he was able to reach his full potential. In preparation for their move to Los Angeles with their daughter, who was 6 years old at the time, John and Ruth, his wife of 6 years, wanted to purchase a bohemian playhouse in which they could host parties for budding actors and Hollywood types. A big property on the western side of Los Feliz was purchased by the Sowdens. At the time, this neighborhood was home to a number of prominent performers and entertainment moguls. Additionally, it was home to the storybook-style mansions that served as inspiration for the majority of Walt Disney's fairy tale creations. It was the ideal setting for Wright Jr. to design and construct the building, which occupies 5,600 square feet and has 7 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. The structure is constructed out of reinforced concrete and stucco and is supported by a wooden frame. A dramatic and sculptural exterior can be seen on the Sowden house, which is reminiscent of the Hollywood sets that Wright Jr. was famous for designing. The grandeur of the Mayan revival is not the only thing that the house reflects. It also reflects the Art Deco style, which is characterized by fan-shaped patterns and brutalist characteristics. An imposing presence is added to the front of the home by the absence of any windows, with the exception of a single enormous window that is located over the French entrance doors. Nevertheless, the residence is flooded with light, since it is designed around a central courtyard that serves as the focal point of the whole structure. The plan is really extremely ordered and easy, despite the fact that it seems to be rather complicated and peculiar. It is basically a rectangle with the center cut out, and there are hallways on each side that go to the private rooms on the east and the social areas on the west. Despite the fact that Wright Jr. accomplished a professional success with the house, the Sowden family did not live there for very long. According to the majority of accounts, the family departed because the Mayan revival style received an excessive amount of criticism. Nonetheless, it is possible that the family left for additional personal reasons. Ruth married her second husband, David Barnett, at the Sowden house, where they stayed until 1936, when they sold the mansion to a real estate developer called Milton Blazier. According to census records, John and Ruth had divorced by the year 1930. Ruth had married David Barnett. The mansion was leased out by Blazier to a number of different people, one of which being James W. Boudwin, a child star during the silent cinema period. Nevertheless, not all Hollywood ties are as sparkling as others. In 1945, Dr. George Hodel, who was one of the primary suspects in the Black Dahlia case, purchased the house and moved in with his third wife, Dorothy, and their 3 boys, Michael, Kelly, and Steve. A highly indulged only kid with a skyrocketing intelligence level of 186, Hodel was born on October 10, 1907 in Pasadena. He was an only child. He received his high school diploma ahead of schedule and attempted to enroll in Caltech when he was 15 years old. However, he was expelled for reasons that are unclear. Family mythology claims that he had an affair with a professor's wife. After deciding to pursue painting, he self-published a paper on the emerging surrealism movement. However, his art career finally failed, which prompted him to go to San Francisco, where he experimented with journalism. Duncan was born to Dr. Hodel and his common-law wife Amelia in the late 1920s. In 1932, Dr. Hodel enrolled at the University of California, Berkeley, as a pre-med student after the birth of Duncan. He was married to another lady by the middle of the 1930s, and the two of them produced a daughter together who they called Tama. This is around when he enrolled in the medical school at UC San Francisco to study surgery. After receiving his degree, Dr. Hodel divorced Tamar's mother and began working as a physician in a logging camp in Arizona. However, by the early 1940s, he had relocated back to Southern California, where he married Dorothy Houston Hodel and became the chief of venereal disease management for the Los Angeles County Health Department. Around 1 mile away from the Millennium Biltmore Hotel, which is thought to be one of the last locations Short was seen alive before her terrible murder. A week later, in January of 1947, Dr. Hodel also maintained a medical office on First Street in downtown Los Angeles. This clinic was located around 1 mile away from the hotel. Despite the fact that Dr. Hodel and Dorothy had divorced by 1946, she and their kids continued to reside at the Sowden house on an irregular basis. While he was living and working in Shanghai, China, he held the position of Lieutenant General for the United Nations Relief and Reconstruction Administration during the same year. Dr. Hodel said that he would stay in Shanghai until the spring of 1947, in a letter that he sent to Lloyd Wright personally. Dr. Hodel was at the time attempting to persuade Lloyd Wright to work in city planning in Shanghai. In spite of this, he unexpectedly resigned from his position in September of 1946 for personal reasons and then moved back to Los Angeles. Despite the fact that Short and Dr. Hodel lived in close proximity to one another and were involved in similar activities, it wasn't until 1949 that he became a target of the investigators. At that time, his daughter Tamar, who was 14 years old at the time, reported to the authorities that she had been subjected to sexual assault at the Sowden house. During the investigation of the Sowden residence, the authorities found and confiscated a number of pornographic art artifacts, as well as images that were considered to be sexually explicit. According to an article that was published in the Los Angeles Mirror in 1949, Dr. Hodel made the following statement: "The action that I was accused of participating in is unclear, and I'm not sure if I was dreaming or if it was real, and if I was being hypnotized or hypnotizing someone else." It was before he sought advice that he made the statement, "These things must have happened." Although the evidence was devastating, Gurge was able to establish a case with the assistance of his highly renowned and successful attorney, Jerry Giesler, and he was ultimately found not guilty in the early 1950s. Giesler was informed by one of the witnesses, a boarder called Joseph Barrett, that Tamar had told him, "This house has secret passageways." This statement was made throughout the course of the case. "I am the one who is responsible for the death of the Black Dahlia. The fact that my father is mad and has a need for blood makes it certain that he will murder me and every other member of this home." This assertion, in conjunction with the allegations of incest that were filed against Dr. Hodel, placed him at the very top of the suspect list that was compiled by the main investigator, Lieutenant Frank Jemison. As a matter of fact, Jemison sent orders for his team to do surveillance on the Sowden house in 1950 when he was questioning him. In the course of the round-the-clock monitoring, several utterances that might be used as evidence against Dr. Hodel were captured on video, and a number of additional witnesses were questioned in order to establish his guilt as the person responsible for the death of Black Dahlia. Dr. Hodel exerted a great deal of effort in order to violently discredit all of the witnesses who claimed that he knew and killed Short. You can read more about it here in the letters from another detective who was sent to the Sowden house for a separate incident. But by 1951, Dr. Hodel had already relocated to Honolulu, leaving behind his family in Los Angeles. In a short amount of time after that, Jemison decided to dismiss the case and exonerate Dr. Hodel, a move that many people find perplexing in light of the evidence that seems to be against him. According to the Honolulu Advertiser, Dr. Hodel remarried and went on to become a psychiatrist at the county hospital. While there, he worked with patients and even taught condemned murderers how to dance the foxtrot. Eventually, he and his fourth wife, Hortensia Stark Hodel, relocated to her home country of the Philippines, where they went on to have a number of further children before ultimately separating. Prior to the couple's relocation to San Francisco in the late 1900s, he had the opportunity to meet June, who would become his fifth and last wife. When Dr. Hodel passed away in 1999, June entrusted all of his belongings to his son Steve, who was a former and accomplished Los Angeles homicide investigator. It was through Steve's acquisition of these belongings that Steve discovered his father was a suspect in the murder of Black Dahlia Case Short. In the beginning, Steve had the hope that he would be able to clear his father's name. However, in the end, he discovered facts that persuaded him that his father most likely did commit the crime. Steve released the Black Dahlia Avenger in 2003 as a record of his discoveries, which included eyewitness testimonials, a psychological profile, and physical proof. For example, there are construction work invoices that are still on file at the UCLA library that match evidence discovered with Short's mangled remains. The case was never solved, and scholars and historians continue to strive to bring justice to Short's memory. However, experts continue to be divided as to who the perpetrator was. This is mostly owing to the fact that there were a huge number of suspects, evidence that was lost or corrupted, and the inquiry was sensationalized. The renown of Dr. Hodel was sufficient to provide the Sowden house with an aura of notoriety and allegations of haunting due to the presence of ghosts. According to a study that was published in 1969 by the Historic American Building Survey, the owner who took over after Dr. Hodel's term was a lady who turned out to be a representative of Jerry Geisler's office. Geisler was Hodel's previous attorney. Geisler's office sold the Sowden house to Dr. Harold Mazur in 1951, the same year that Dr. Hodel left to Hawaii. It is presumed that Dr. Hodel placed the house up for sale as a kind of payment for the incest trial. One of Dr. Mazur's children moved into the house between the years 1960 and 1980, at which point the Mazur family either leased it out or allowed it to remain vacant. During this time period, the Mazur family resided in the house. Over the course of many years, neighbors in the area stated that the Sowden house seemed to have deteriorated to the point that it appeared to be abandoned. At some point in time, the Mazur family decided to sell the Sowden house to Zorin Balbez, a designer and developer, in the year 2001. Despite the fact that many of the original characteristics have been retained throughout the years, we particularly like the soaring ceiling in the living room and the stained glass ceiling decorations over the fireplace. The interior has been renovated to accommodate contemporary preferences. The masonry was restored by Balbez. The kitchen was extended, the basement was finishing up, and a big swimming pool was installed in place of the little fountain that was located in the center courtyard. Since the refurbishment, the Sowden house has become a popular site for celebrity fundraisers and a background for television, movie, and other commercial productions. This music video for I Dare You by the Ents is one of our favorite Sowden house sightings. The remodeling also brought about a new period of activity at the Sowden house. Perhaps you are familiar with it from the television series I Am the Night, which aired on TNT and starred Chris Pine. The series was based on the book written by Tamar Hodell's daughter titled One Day She'll Darken, and it dramatized the mystery of the Black Dahlia. Those walls, if only they could communicate. Latoya Ammons, her mother Rosa Campbell, and her 3 children, aged 7, 9, and 12, moved to 3860 Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana, in November 2011. However, things became peculiar after that. According to the Indianapolis Star, the family saw huge black flies on their screened-in porch despite the frigid temperature. Even if they tried, the flies returned. Then they heard footsteps. Ammons and Campbell reported hearing basement activity numerous late nights. Someone seemed to be ascending the basement stairs and entering the kitchen. However, nobody was there. The ghost's footsteps persisted after they locked the kitchen to basement door. Campbell spotted a dark figure wandering around the living room one night. Things became scarier at this point. Campbell found spooky wet trails where she thought she saw it. Despite the disturbing circumstances, Latoya Ammons and her family tried to adjust to their new home. That made the situation extra scarier. 4 months after moving into the rental home, the family had a life-changing event. Latoya Ammons' 12-year-old daughter floated over her bed on March 10, 2012, while her family grieved. What precisely is going on? Campbell later told the Indianapolis Star. Why is this happening? The anxious crowd prayed till the girl could drop. After that, Ammons' visiting relatives left, and Campbell and Ammons decided to seek help. Help was hard to find. One local church suggested cleaning the house with bleach and ammonia and drawing oil crosses on all the doors and windows to ward off spirits. However, most local churches ignored them. 2 clairvoyants told the family that over 200 ghosts were in the rented property and suggested they move. The house's malevolent aura kept the Ammons family in a state of extreme fear. The kids murmured, "It's time to die," and "I will kill you." When they spoke, their eyes swelled and their lips curled into fake grins. Ammons felt lightheaded and heated, like she was losing control of her body. She told the Indianapolis Star, "You can tell it's different, someone or something supernatural." Ammons claims her youngest son regularly communicated with an unseen child and was flung across the room by otherworldly forces. Her daughter, too, heard voices telling her that death was near and she would never see her family again. Children were absent from school for a long period due to the effect. Later, doctors and police officers engaged. They were unprepared for what they found. On April 19, 2012, Latoya Ammons took her children to their family doctor, Jeffrey Onwukwu. Onwukwu noticed the kids' delusional behavior, including their low voices and awkward words. In an Indianapolis Star interview, he added, 3 decades have passed, and I have never in my life heard anything like that. When I walked into the room, I was experiencing a great deal of fear. The kids showed demonic possession signs while under the doctor's care. According to a DCS investigation, medical staff watched Latoya's youngest child fly into the air and slam against a wall without being touched. According to reports, the child climbed a wall and flipped over his grandmother. Seeing these events, a Department of Children and Families nurse and caseworker exited the room in horror. Many were very concerned about what was happening. After concluding the children were in danger, DCS removed Latoya Ammons from her children quickly. Ammons shook with anguish. In an Indianapolis Star interview, she said, "We had already been through so much and fought so hard for our lives. We were clearly working together and winning our battles. We won, but they separated us." Department of Child Services, DCS, asked Hammond police to go into the Demon House after LaToya Ammons and her children were separated. While inside with Campbell, the cops saw many unusual events. The two Hammond police officers reported radio issues, a white, hazy apparition, and a disembodied voice saying, "Hey!" Their report included all these incidents. They found strange, greasy stuff trickling from the blinds on their second visit. At this time, local priest Michael Maginot got aware of the issue and decided to investigate. Maginot performed a brief exorcism on LaToya Ammons in front of two law enforcement officers and a Department of Children and Family Services case manager after writing to a bishop. Department of Children and Youth Services case manager told Indianapolis Star, "We felt like someone was in the room with you, someone breathing down your neck." Reverend Maginot performed 3 exorcisms on LaToya Ammons. After the third exorcism, one of Maginot's companions burned a paper with the demon's name, and Ammons returned to his normal condition. When she and Campbell moved back to Indianapolis in November 2012, Ammons gained custody of her 3 children. To forget the demon house and move on was liberating. Zach Bagans, a paranormal investigator, bought and demolished it in 2016. However, he kept portion of the basement he bought for his Las Vegas museum. LaToya Ammons and her family never want to return to the demon house or its grounds. "Don't assume it's not real because I've lived it," she told the Indianapolis Star. She meant their experience. Known to be true.
Difficult to avoid staring at the home located at 805 West Linden Street in Boise, Idaho as you are driving by it. Having been covered in a coating of soot, having windows that have been shattered and boarded up, and having debris scattered about the yard, the craftsman-style house that is 2 stories tall and 2,728 square feet in size seems to be an abandoned horror movie set. The reality, on the other hand, is a lot more terrifying. The residence is generally referred to as the Boise Murder House, however, it is also occasionally referred to as the Chop Chop House by locals. This is a sarcastic allusion to the grisly killing that occurred there more than 3 decades ago. On the early morning hours of June 30, 1987, Daniel Rogers, who was 37 years old at the time, and Darren Cox, who was 31 years old, shot and murdered Preston Murr, who was 21 years old. The incident took place in the basement of Rogers's house, which was located at 805 West Linden Street. Following the dismemberment of his body using an axe and a knife, the 2 guys packed the pieces of his body in plastic bags and drove to the border between Idaho and Oregon in order to dispose of the body parts in the Brownlee Reservoir nearby. The circumstances of the crime are horrifying, yet, there is one particular aspect that is more frightening than the others. Murr came dangerously close to escaping. The records filed in the courtroom indicate that a fight took place between the 3 males at around midnight, and that one of the 2 other guys shot Murr in the shoulder during the altercation. Following his successful escape from the house, he made a beeline for a neighboring residence, where he pounded on the door and pleaded for assistance, but no one replied. On the other hand, the neighbor who was inside did contact the police. He reported hearing someone hammering on his door and someone yelling, "Let go of me," followed by a shriek of agony. He also heard someone screaming loudly. When he peered out his window, he noticed someone after Murr. They ultimately caught him and dragged him back into the basement of Rogers' house, where he was shot in the back of the head, causing him to die. Despite the fact that the police did not show up that evening, the same neighbor contacted them again the next morning to request that they examine the blood that was found on his screen door earlier that evening. A further horrifying image of Murr's frantic struggle to flee his assassins the night before was painted by the blood that was discovered around the area, including on sidewalks and at least one other home in the neighborhood. An ominous legacy continues to be present in the vicinity of 805 West Linden Street even though the crime scene has been cleaned up for a considerable amount of time. James Howell is listed as the new owner of the home in the property records that are accessible online as of the year 2000. It is unknown what happened to the house in the years immediately after Rogers's transfer to the Idaho State Correctional Center to carry out the remainder of his life term without the possibility of release. Since then, Howell has leased the property out to a number of different tenants, and now, because of its close proximity to Boise State University, it has become a popular option for students who are looking for accommodation that is located off campus. The local legend around the home has a very college-like flavor as a consequence of this circumstance. According to a persistent story, fraternity members have reported witnessing blood pouring down the walls of the basement for years. This situation has been going on for quite some time. Many people who have lived there in the past have reported that there is something off about the location, despite the fact that this story is not true and that 805 W. Linden was never an official fraternity house. There was a strange vibe and a scary atmosphere in the basement. As a means of intimidating them, we would bring people down there. Joe W., a former student at Birmingham State University, shared his thoughts with 107.9 Light FM, a local radio station. "I never saw any ghosts, but you could tell something wasn't right," he said. Another resident of Boise named Rachel R. shared with the station that her family came very close to purchasing the property in the year 2000, and that she continues to experience anxiety whenever she thinks about the tour of the house that they took. She said that the basement was by far the most unsettling area of the building, and that it seemed as if it had been abandoned. When it comes to the stories that have been shared with 107.9, the most peculiar one is the one that was provided by Dan D., and it extends well beyond the basement. One night, Dan and his companion had the impression that they heard someone attempting to break into the home. This is according to his narrative. As they stepped out to the front porch to have a look at the situation, they discovered that nobody was there. Once Dan had finished gazing around the front yard, he turned his attention to the home and saw a big black oily-looking thing in the window of a bedroom located on the second floor. It is in his memory that he's seen the shadowy figure walk away from the window and towards the entrance of the bedroom before it vanished. Soon after that, it was seen once again outdoors, this time in a mirror that was placed on the porch. Dan watched as the ball of oily blackness went down the enormous column of the porch, gradually expanding in size until it filled up the whole image of the mirror and passed straight through him. He was able to see it go through him. It was the strangest and most unsettling thing I've ever experienced, and the very act of typing this brings up memories of it once again. He said that it seemed like icy fingers were pressing down on his shoulders. Howell is certain that the house is not haunted, despite the fact that tales like these and many more are unsettling. Deanne Davis, a former renter who resided in the home with her 2 kids from 2008 to 2009, is in agreement with this statement. She said to Idaho News Channel 2 that her family did not see any paranormal activity when they were residing in the property. However, even if there are no ghosts that are haunting the house, there is another power that is definitely present, the house's negative reputation. Davis said, "I was never afraid of it or felt that it was haunted, but there are so many stories that everyone is convinced that it is. Difficult to avoid staring at the home located at 805 West Linden Street in Boise, Idaho as you are driving by it. Having been covered in a coating of soot, having windows that have been shattered and boarded up, and having debris scattered about the yard, the craftsman-style house that is 2 stories tall and 2,728 square feet in size seems to be an abandoned horror movie set. The reality, on the other hand, is a lot more terrifying. The residence is generally referred to as the Boise Murder House, however, it is also occasionally referred to as the Chop Chop House by locals. This is a sarcastic allusion to the grisly killing that occurred there more than 3 decades ago. On the early morning hours of June 30, 1987, Daniel Rogers, who was 37 years old at the time, and Darren Cox, who was 31 years old, shot and murdered Preston Murr, who was 21 years old. The incident took place in the basement of Rogers's house, which was located at 805 West Linden Street. Following the dismemberment of his body using an axe and a knife, the two guys packed the pieces of his body in plastic bags and drove to the border between Idaho and Oregon in order to dispose of the body parts in the Brownlee Reservoir nearby. The circumstances of the crime are horrifying, yet, there is one particular aspect that is more frightening than the others. Mer came dangerously close to escaping. The records filed in the courtroom indicate that a fight took place between the three males at around midnight, and that one of the two other guys shot Mer in the shoulder during the altercation. Following his successful escape from the house, he made a beeline for a neighboring residence, where he pounded on the door and pleaded for assistance, but no one replied. On the other hand, the neighbor who was inside did contact the police. He reported hearing someone hammering on his door and someone yelling, "Let go of me," followed by a shriek of agony. He also heard someone screaming loudly. When he peered out his window, he noticed someone after Mer. They ultimately caught him and dragged him back into the basement of Roger's house, where he was shot in the back of the head, causing him to die. Despite the fact that the police did not show up that evening, the same neighbor contacted them again the next morning to request that they examine the blood that was found on his screen door earlier that evening. A further horrifying image of Miss frantic struggle to flee his assassins the night before was painted by the blood that was discovered around the area, including on sidewalks and at least one other home in the neighborhood. An ominous legacy continues to be present in the vicinity of 805 West Linden Street even though the crime scene has been cleaned up for a considerable amount of time. James Howell is listed as the new owner of the home in the property records that are accessible online as of the year 2000. It is unknown what happened to the house in the years immediately after Rogers's transfer to the Idaho State Correctional Center to carry out the remainder of his life term without the possibility of release. Since then, Howell has leased the property out to a number of different tenants, and now, because of its close proximity to Boise State University, it has become a popular option for students who are looking for accommodation that is located off campus. The local legend around the home has a very college-like flavor as a consequence of this circumstance. According to a persistent story, fraternity members have reported witnessing blood pouring down the walls of the basement for years. This situation has been going on for quite some time. Many people who have lived there in the past have reported that there is something off about the location, despite the fact that this story is not true and that 805 W. Linden was never an official fraternity house. There was a strange vibe and a scary atmosphere in the basement. As a means of intimidating them, we would bring people down there. Joe W., a former student at Birmingham State University, shared his thoughts with 107.9 Light FM, a local radio station. "I never saw any ghosts, but you could tell something wasn't right," he said. Another resident of Boise named Rachel R. shared with the station that her family came very close to purchasing the property in the year 2000, and that she continues to experience anxiety whenever she thinks about the tour of the house that they took. She said that the basement was by far the most unsettling area of the building, and that it seemed as if it had been abandoned. When it comes to the stories that have been shared with 107.9, the most peculiar one is the one that was provided by Dan D., and it extends well beyond the basement. One night, Dan and his companion had the impression that they heard someone attempting to break into the home. This is according to his narrative. As they stepped out to the front porch to have a look at the situation, they discovered that nobody was there. Once Dan had finished gazing around the front yard, he turned his attention to the home and saw a big black oily-looking thing in the window of a bedroom located on the second floor. It is in his memory that he's seen the shadowy figure walk away from the window and towards the entrance of the bedroom before it vanished. Soon after that, it was seen once again outdoors, this time in a mirror that was placed on the porch. Dan watched as the ball of oily blackness went down the enormous column of the porch, gradually expanding in size until it filled up the whole image of the mirror and passed straight through him. He was able to see it go through him. It was the strangest and most unsettling thing I've ever experienced, and the very act of typing this brings up memories of it once again. He said that it seemed like icy fingers were pressing down on his shoulders. Howell is certain that the house is not haunted, despite the fact that tales like these and many more are unsettling. Deanne Davis, a former renter who resided in the home with her 2 kids from 2008 to 2009, is in agreement with this statement. She said to Idaho News Channel 2 that her family did not see any paranormal activity when they were residing in the property. However, even if there are no ghosts that are haunting the house, there is another power that is definitely present, the house's negative reputation. Davis said, "I was never afraid of it or felt that it was haunted, but there are so many stories that everyone is convinced that it is." In 1780 to a prestigious Long Island family, Seabury Treadwell was a descendant of Episcopal Bishop Samuel Seabury. Treadwell married Eliza Parker in 1820 and had 7 children, 5 girls and 2 boys, over the next 15 years before retiring in 1835. Despite his success as a businessman, Treadwell was not well known outside of his community. Joseph Brewster, a hatmaker and speculative real estate developer, bought 2 land lots in 1831 for $6,550, equivalent to $187,000 in 2023. On one of them, he built a townhouse at 29 East 4th Street. The architectural writer Donald Reynolds wrote that Brewster finished the house in April 1832 and lived there for 3 years. Gertrude, her 2 brothers, and her 5 sisters lived with their parents. After the second youngest daughter, Sarah, was severely injured in a stagecoach accident in the 1850s, a hand-pulled elevator was installed to bring Sarah to her bedroom, and the staircase to the 3rd floor was rebuilt. Only 3 of the Treadwells' children married and moved out of the house. 4 daughters and 1 son never married. Eliza Treadwell died in 1882, followed by the siblings' unmarried brother in 1884. By then, many of their wealthy neighbors were moving away. The New York Times and the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation indicate that it was not known why the family remained, but the Toronto Star wrote that the Treadwells were too poor to move uptown. The unmarried sisters Julia, Phoebe, Sarah, and Gertrude remained in the house as spinsters. They gradually upgraded the furniture, although the sisters wished to retain the furnishings as Papa wanted it. With no income, the sisters subsisted on their father's estate, selling off land in Brooklyn and New Jersey as money became scarcer. Sarah eventually moved to the Cadillac Hotel near Times Square, where she died in 1906, leaving just Phoebe, Julia, and Gertrude at the house. According to Seabury Treadwell's great-nephew George Chapman, the family was not a friendly lot. By 1909, 3 of the remaining sisters had died. Gertrude, the only surviving sister, had become a recluse after her father forbade her from marrying a Roman Catholic physician. She hired a maid to greet her few visitors. She had a conflict with the Consolidated Gas Company, which had allowed the Treadwells to pay their gas bill less often. According to the New York Herald Tribune, a young and inexperienced bill collector cut off Gertrude's gas in the mistaken belief that the family had not paid their bill. A gas company director went to apologize, but Gertrude refused to talk to him after an hour. Due to her worsening health, Gertrude remained in her second-floor bedroom throughout the 1910s and 1920s, while one of her nephews moved to the 3rd floor. They mostly lived in the house and went to Lake Champlain for a few weeks every year. In her final years, Gertrude had to sell her belongings and take out a mortgage on her home. Despite this, she kept the house in its original condition long after all the neighboring private homes had been demolished or converted. After her nephew died in 1930, Gertrude rarely had visitors, and she died alone in one of the second-floor bedrooms in 1933. The New York Times wrote that she had died as a gentle, well-bred recluse hemmed in by ugliness, and she had been forgotten. The house was unoccupied for several years. Eliza Nichols, daughter of Gertrude's oldest sister Elizabeth, wanted to pay off the house's mortgage by selling the structure and its contents. George Chapman bought the building, saving it from foreclosure and demolition. According to the New York Times, Chapman bought it the night before the house and its furnishings were to go on public auction. The group gave a special event for the museum on May 8, 1936 and opened it 3 days later on May 11. Beginning at 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. The same month, the New York State Education Department installed a plaque commemorating Seabury Treadwell's residence. The same year, the Historic American Buildings Survey took many photos of the house, and Columbia University's Avery Architectural and Fine Arts Library exhibited photos of the interiors. The Historic Landmark Society launched a fundraising campaign and at the time, the group spent $3,500 yearly to manage the museum, but its 50-cent entry price and 2,500 annual visitors were not enough. Chapman warned that the house was in danger of being sold. He paid off the mortgage and continued to run the house as a museum. The museum's caretakers, married couple Harry Lundberg and Florence Helm, lived in the basement until Helm's death in 1954. The museum attracted 1,000 visitors annually by 1950. The next year, the Historic Landmark Society's Board of Directors convened to discuss the endowment fund, which had grown to $25,000 but was still short of its goal. The Boston-based Hale Foundation promised to donate $45,000 if the museum's operators were able to match the donation, but this did not happen. Consolidated Edison installed a gas heating system in the museum in 1955. By the early 1960s, the house was in very poor condition and needed $200,000 in repairs. According to architectural critic Ada Louise Huxtable, the house was so weak that a severe storm could potentially destroy the plaster ceilings, and the original furnishings were ready to crumble on a touch. The museum still did not have enough visitors to finance its own operation. Museum officials had unsuccessfully attempted to obtain funding from private donors, and Randolph Jack, its curator, was personally paying for the museum's upkeep. After Jack suggested selling the house and its contents to raise money in early 1965, the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, LPC, called it a document of great importance for its authenticity but had no legal authority to preserve it. Preservationists petitioned federal and state officials to protect the house as a landmark, and 100 children protested its sale. The Decorators Club expressed interest in restoring the house, and the museum was closed for some restoration work in August 1968. The club hired Joseph Roberto, an architect at nearby New York University, to consult on waterproofing issues. The club had raised $5,000 at the time, all of which was used to restore the house. Roberto wrote several letters to officials asking them to fund the house's restoration, but Huxtable wrote about it in 1970, bringing attention to the project. The New York City government and the New York State Historic Trust provided initial funding for the renovation in 1970. The Robertos, along with 6 other people, were named museum trustees. Structural and exterior work began in 1972 and was completed in 3 phases. The project involved rebuilding the foundation, replacing more than 2,500 bricks along the party walls, and replacing the S1 carpet had to be replaced due to its tattered condition. Restoration workers examined several layers of paint before restoring the walls to their original off-white color. Lighting fixtures and cast iron railings were also restored. At the time of the renovation, the city landmark designation only extended to the exterior, so there were concerns that the house's interior could be significantly altered during the renovation. The city was in the midst of a severe fiscal crisis, leading the Christian Science Monitor to describe the renovation as a bright spot in these sad times for New York City. The first floor reopened in November 1979, and the museum received an additional $70,000 in donations to refurbish the second floor. Museum officials held a Christmas party in 1980 to mark the completion of the second floor renovation. The project had cost $280,000, funded by over 2 dozen donors. At the time, museum officials planned to spend another $100,000 to restore the kitchen and bedrooms. The same year, Joseph Roberto received a Certificate of Merit from the Municipal Art Society for his work on the house's restoration. The Robertos continued to work in an office at the front of the house. The New York Times wrote in 1987, "The house is very much alive these days with its occasional use for special events and celebrations." The owner of 3 small buildings just east of the Seabury Treadwell House, at 31-2, opened the basement, first, and second floors to the public on Sunday afternoons and allowed groups to book appointments during weekdays. After the demolition of these buildings the following year, the house suffered $1 million in damage. The lack of a retaining wall to the east caused a crack along the length of the house, and the interiors suffered water damage. When Joseph Roberto died in 1988, the museum began searching for new staff. In April 1990, the museum hired several staff members, including Executive Director Margaret Halsey Gardner. The museum spent $600,000 to stabilize the house, according to Gardner. The sculptor David Flaherty was hired to restore the interior plasterwork, and Jan Herd Picorni was hired to research the house's history and architecture as part of the museum's master plan. As New York City tourism numbers fluctuated, the museum hosted tours of the neighborhood to raise funds. By the 2010s, 40 volunteers ran the museum, which had 15,000 annual visitors. The neighborhood had become a fashionable residential area. If the structure were still a dwelling, the Wall Street Journal estimated it might sell for $6 million in 2018. The LPC reviewed Call-Adopt 2 Park Corporation's 2012 proposal for an 8-story hotel west of the house because it could affect the house's structural integrity. The hotel's developers promised not to damage the museum and that the new building would structurally reinforce the museum. Gardner submitted a petition to the New York Supreme Court in early 2018, claiming that the New York City Department of City Planning had approved the hotel project based on erroneous information from Call-Adopt. Gardner claimed that the hotel's construction could cause the house to collapse, and museum officials put up signs warning that the museum could be bankrupted by increasing legal costs. Gardner formally sued the DCP and Call-Adopt in mid-2018 and a subcommittee of the New York City Council voted against the hotel plans that September. Call-Adopt then sued to reverse the City Council's decision, claiming that they planned to ensure that the house would not be damaged. The developer filed new plans for the hotel in late 2020, but the LPC delayed a decision over these plans because of concerns over the house's structural integrity. When the hotel was approved in late 2023, Gardner said that vibrations from construction could cause irreparable damage and threatened to sue. As the dispute over the adjacent hotel development continued, NYC Parks was planning to renovate the Seabury Treadwell House for $3.2 million starting in late 2024. Virginia General Assembly approved Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum construction. A pre-approved tract of property along the West Fork River in Virginia was purchased by an appointed board of directors. Prison workers started construction in late 1858. Most of the construction materials, including blue sandstone from Mt. Clair, West Virginia, were found locally, and professional German and Irish stonemasons were hired. The Civil War halted construction in 1861. The government sought the hospital's leftover construction money for defense when Virginia seceded. The 7th Ohio Volunteer Infantry took the money from a local bank and sent it to Wheeling before this could happen. The restored administration of Virginia, a Unionist Virginian administration, would spend this money. These money were a start-up treasury for a future Union state. This treasury funded hospital building in 1862. The grounds and structures were frequently occupied by Union and Confederate forces, and Confederate raiders stole building materials during development. After West Virginia became a state in 1863, the facility became the West Virginia Facility for the Insane. Early patients were admitted in October 1864, but development lasted until 1881. The 200-foot central clock tower and black chambers were constructed in 1871 and 1873, respectively. A farm, dairy, waterworks, and cemetery were on the hospital grounds to make it self-sufficient. Asthma, sloth, egotism, family problems, and greediness were criteria for asylum admission back then. An overwhelming number of patients were admitted, leaving the facility short on personnel and beds. A gas well was dug on hospital premises in 1902. The name was changed again in 1913 to Weston State Hospital. The hospital, originally planned to handle 250 patients alone, hosted 717 in 1880, 1,661 in 1938, over 1,800 in 1949, and 2,600 in the 1950s in overcrowded circumstances. The facility had epileptics, alcoholics, drug addicts, and non-educable mental defectives according to a 1938 survey commission from North American medical organizations. The Charleston Gazette reported in 1949 that much of the complex had poor sanitation, furniture, lighting, and heating, but one wing, rebuilt with Works Progress Administration funds after a 1935 patient fire, was luxurious. The asylum had several fatalities due to poor treatment and sanitation. The asylum's official death count is unknown, although study is continuing. Weston State Hospital hosted the West Virginia lobotomy project in the early 1950s. Historian Titus Swan estimates the number to be in the five-figure range. Because asylums were overcrowded, West Virginia and Walter Freeman tried to employ lobotomy to lower patient numbers. The hospital's population dropped in the 1980s owing to mental illness treatment modifications. Uncontrollable patients were caged. Then Governor Arch Moore revealed intentions to establish a new mental institution elsewhere in the state and turn Weston Hospital into a jail in February 1986. Moore ordered jail conversion construction, but the state declared it unlawful and halted it. Weston's William R. Sharp Jr. Hospital replaced the state hospital in May 1994. The court ordered the closure owing to a class action lawsuit by patient families. The structure and grounds have been virtually empty save for fairs, religious revivals, and tourists. Paintballing off-duty municipal, county, and state police officers destroyed all four levels in 1999. 3 were fired over the event. The structure has been proposed as a Civil War museum and a hotel and golf course complex. For preservation and tenant selection, the Weston Hospital Revitalization Committee was founded in 2000 as a 501(c)(3). In 2004, 3 tiny military history, toys, and mental health museums opened on the first floor of the main hospital building, but fire code issues caused them to shut. The West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources auctioned the facility on August 29, 2007. A Morgantown asbestos removal contractor, Joe Jordan, was the top bidder and paid $1.5 million for the 242,000 square foot property. Bidding began at $500,000. The old hospital grounds are also being maintained by Joe Jordan. Weston State Hospital hosted Fall Fest in October 2007. Historic and paranormal daytime excursions and nocturnal ghost hunts were available. A member of Historic Hotels of America, the Mizpah Hotel may be found in the city of Tonopah in the state of Nevada. Before the year 1927, the Mizpah and the adjoining Belvedere structure were competitors for the title of the tallest structure in the state of Nevada. Every single one of them is just 5 floors tall. Back in the day, the hotel was the social center of Mizpah, and it was called for the Mizpah Mine, which was located nearby. During the time when Tonopah was experiencing a silver boom, the hotel was a popular destination for affluent investors and famous people. One of the earliest luxury hotels in the state, it was there when it opened. These days, it is a combination of contemporary and ancient, and it is widely regarded as one of the most haunted accommodations in the United States. The Mizpah Saloon, which first opened its doors in 1907, was the establishment that came before the hotel, which at the time was one of the oldest buildings in the region. A number of Nevada's most well-known investors, including George Wingfield, Cal Brower, George Nixon, and Bob Govan, were responsible for providing funding for the lodging establishment. Reno resident George Holsworth was the architect who built the motel. The guys who provided the hotel with funding were also the owners of other mining enterprises and businesses in Tonopah. From the sides and the back, the hotel was given a stone facade to cover its exterior. It is still linked to the nearby Brower-Govan block, which was the first Mizpah hotel and continues to operate as such. An elevator was installed in the hotel, which was also the site of the first elevator in Tonopah. The two buildings are connected by a wooden staircase. It is said that Wyatt Earp was the proprietor of the Mizpah Saloon, that Jack Dempsey worked as a bouncer, and that Howard Hughes wed Jean Peters in the Mizpah Hotel. There is a bustle of action. In spite of the fact that some accounts assert that the time of the Mizpah just does not fit in with the lives of these individuals, the hotel is home to a room named after Jack Dempsey and a saloon named after Wyatt Earp. The Mizpah was owned by a number of different people throughout the course of its history, until it was finally acquired by Frank Scott of Las Vegas in 1979. Despite the fact that he brought the hotel up to date by including contemporary comforts, he managed to maintain the old-fashioned romanticism that had first attracted him and his visitors to the establishment in the first place. It took 2.5 years to finish the remodeling of the hotel, which cost $4 million and took a total of 2 years. Since 1999, the hotel has been closed down, and it is now peaceful and calm, with the only people who visit it being the ghosts who name the Mizpah their home. The hotel was acquired by Fred and Nancy Klein, owners of Klein Cellars in Sonoma, at the beginning of 2011. They then proceeded to restore the property and reopen it to the general public in August of the same year. Currently, the hotel has 47 rooms, a bar, and 2 restaurants to offer its guests. On top of that, there are plans to include a casino into the property. Ghost hunters who are interested in experiencing the peculiarity of the Clown Motel and Tonopah Cemetery are among the customers that the motel welcomes these days. These tourists come from all across Nevada and are exploring the region. It is more crucial to note that the hotel is the residence of the Lady in Red as well as other mysterious beings. In the United States, the Mizpah Hotel is considered to be the most haunted hotel. There are rumors that the structure is fully inhabited by spirits, and ever since the hotel first opened its doors, there have been stories spread about unusual happenings that have taken place there. Senator Key Pittman of the United States of America passed away at the hotel in 1940 while being held on ice in one of the hotel's bathtubs, according to a particularly terrible personal account. A name for themselves has been established by the spirits of the Mizpah, who have a history of 111 years of a difficult past in Nevada. The Kleins, who are the present proprietors of the hotel, have expressed their gratitude to the property's ghosts and confirmed that the ghosts take great pleasure in interacting with visitors. At the Mizpah Hotel, there is a ghost that has been said to be that of Rose, a prostitute who was killed. When guests discover that their belongings have magically moved from one location to another, they report her presence. Located on the highest level of the Mizpah, Rose was a lady of the night who was known for her high-class lifestyle. It was a jealous John-turned-lover who wanted her to abandon her line of work that ultimately led to her death by strangulation in the hotel room. Not only did she decline, but she also met her untimely death in the very same room that visitors may now reserve and spend the night in. At the Mizpah, Rose is not the only ghost that is said to haunt the hotel. There is also a soldier who has not been identified who is said to haunt the 3rd and 4th levels of the establishment. The only thing that is known about him is that he passed away at the Mizpah Hotel. His name is unknown. In addition to that, there are 2 spectral children who are said to haunt the 3rd story. They are most often seen in the halls and rooms of the hotel, where they are known to pull practical jokes on the visitors. It has been claimed by a number of visitors that they have heard somebody laughing and that their doors have opened and closed on their own. You believed that was the end of it? No, not exactly. Not only that, but there are also 2 bank robbers who were killed by their accomplice while they were doing a robbery. Visitors and employees who chance to find themselves in the basement are claimed to experience shivers and other weird feelings as a result of the presence of their spirits, who are supposed to haunt the basement. Both the Tonopah Cemetery and the Clown Motel may be found quite close to the Mizpah Hotel, which is located just down the street. Tonopah is even said to be under the influence of a curse for some reason. The fire at the Tonopah Belmont mine was the beginning of the so-called Curse of Tonopah. In 1911, the mine fire claimed the lives of 17 workers on February 23. There are 2 shafts in the mine, one of which is upcast and the other of which is downcast from the manner the mine was created. It was around 5:50 in the morning when the fire was discovered, and after looking for it for over an hour, they discovered that it was burning some lumber that had been placed toward the bottom of the shaft. It was believed that the fire was caused by a little candle that had been kept lighted. When it was originally detected, the superintendent at the time instructed everyone to disregard it and to go to work since the fire was located in a different area when it was discovered. On that particular day, the majority of the miners voiced their opposition, yet, the fear of being fired was sufficient to make them go further into the mines. After some time had passed, the supervisor saw that the flames were rapidly spreading throughout the mines. As a result, the workers were instructed to evacuate the mines, with the exception of those who were actively putting out the fire. Men were dispersed all over the place, lacked proper training, and violated our commands. As a consequence of this, a significant number of them found themselves engulfed in the smoke and flames that were present inside the mine. A reversal of air currents through the mine caused the fire to spread more quickly than the miners were able to escape. This was because of the configuration of the mine. A total of 14 of the guys who passed away are now laid to rest in the Tonopah Cemetery. Those who go to the cemetery claim to have seen weird orbs and sounds that do not belong to them. The true haunting hotspot, however, is the hotel that is located next door. A stone's throw away from an ancient cemetery that is littered with the remains of those who have died in the past, the Clown Motel, which has been given the title of America's Scariest Motel, was constructed. There is a battalion of glassy-eyed circus clowns at the Clown Motel, which is located in the middle of the Nevada state line between Las Vegas and Reno. The proprietors of the motel promise to visitors who stumble in that it is a pleasant and safe place to relax for the night. Residents of the Clown Motel are certain that the establishment is haunted. In the legend, the clown sculptures are said to serve as containers for the ghosts of the miners. The miners' spirits are said to inhabit the dolls and come to life. There have been reports of apparitions traveling to and from the cemetery, and voices that do not belong to any one person have been heard stating things like "we mined and we died that day." If you go back far enough in time, you will find that the Pueblo Native Americans dressed up in clothes that resembled clowns. This allowed them to express their own characteristics and welcome the possessions of spirits that were located nearby. Due to the fact that their identities are always shifting, it is possible that clowns provide connections to the spirit realm. According to the proprietor of the hotel, he has reported hearing footsteps and knocks coming from rooms that are vacant at the motel. At various times during the day, there have been reports of a guy exiting the cemetery and roaming about the site. These occurrences have been documented. When one of the previous owners made an effort to communicate with the ghost, he became frozen and then disappeared without a trace. Furthermore, it has been reported that clowns themselves have been seen leaving the cemetery, complete with balloons. An extensive selection of alcoholic beverages may be found at the Crescent Hotel and Spa, which is located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. In the 1880s, while the skeletal frame of the hotel was being created, it is reported that one of the Irish stonemasons accidentally committed suicide by jumping to his death in the room that is now known as Room 218. It has been stated that this particular room is the most spiritually active room in the hotel, and it has been a popular destination for television film crews for decades due to the high number and quality of ghost sightings that have been recorded. Due to the nature of the inexplicable behavior, staff of the Victorian Hotel have referred to this creature as Michael, which is a categorized poltergeist. This has been the case throughout the historic period of the hotel. There have been reports of guests seeing hands emerge from the bathroom mirror, hearing screams of a man falling from the ceiling, and the door opening and then slamming shut behind them, making it impossible to open it again. As a result of the allure of this activity, visitors had deliberately requested the historic accommodations of Room 218 in order to have the opportunity to experience something. Many of the hotel's workers have reported seeing jovial spirits dressed in Victorian attire while dining in the Crystal Dining Room. At one point over the holiday season, the great Christmas tree and the presents that were placed beneath it migrated from one end of the room to the other while the dining room was closed. The following morning, workers discovered that the tree and parcels had been relocated, and chairs had been arranged in a circle with their backs to the newly positioned holiday sign. On another occasion, when staff returned to the dining room in the morning, they saw that everything was in immaculate order, with the exception of menus that were dispersed across the room. When a waitress peered into the enormous mirror that was located between the doors that led from the dining room to the kitchen, she saw a man and a woman dressed in Victorian attire face one another as if they were engaged in a wedding for the first time. Following the groom's turn and making eye contact with the waitress, the pair gradually drifted off into the distance. The waitress resigned from her work not long after the occurrence of this event. A guy dressed in Victorian attire is seen seated at a table close to the windows and uttering the following phrase, "I saw the most beautiful woman here last night and I am waiting for her to return." This is yet another instance of paranormal activity that is often reported. A great number of people have reported seeing apparitions dressed in Victorian ball garb dancing about the chamber in the early hours of the morning, while the room was closed and dark. During the 1930s, the Erie Hotel in Eureka Springs was converted into a cancer research facility for experimental purposes. Norman Baker, who called himself Drive and claimed to be a registered physician, evaluated cancer patients in the basement of the hotel while simultaneously charging families who were unaware of his actions their whole life savings. Today, the hotel is visited by a number of ghosts belonging to the medical facility. Within the foyer of the hotel, Dr. Baker has been seen. It has been said that he is a guy who is dressed in a purple shirt and a white linen suit, which are identical to images of the notorious businessman. It is common knowledge that a nurse pushing a gurney who lives in the region of Dr. Baker's former morgue is known to squeak and rattle throughout the hotel's corridors. During the middle of the night, a maintenance worker at the hotel saw all of the washing machines and dryers suddenly switch on for no apparent reason. Dr. Baker's former morgue, which still has his autopsy table and walk-in freezer, is next to the washing facility, which is situated in the same neighborhood. According to the housekeepers, Theodora was recently seen in room 419. After the two parties had verbally exchanged courtesies, she disappears after introducing herself as a cancer patient who is being treated by Dr. Baker. The chef at the hotel, Steve Garrison, is certain that he does not consume alcohol while on the job. To tell you the truth, he does not drink at all. However, Garrison may have been seduced by two bizarre encounters that took place in the kitchen of the Crystal Dining Room, which is located in the haunted hotel. He glanced up one morning while he was slicing and chopping vegetables and noticed a little child wearing old-fashioned attire and panties, wearing spectacles that looked like pop bottles, and bouncing about the kitchen. When Garrison turned on the lights to begin the preparations for the day, some or all of the pots and pans came flying off their hooks. This occurred on another morning. Due to the fact that the Crescent Hotel in the Ozarks is home to a multitude of spectral stories, tours of this historic establishment are conducted throughout the whole year. Vista was constructed by merging pre-existing buildings and was formerly known as the Community Hotel. However, a contest winner decided to give it the name Monte Vista. The hotel was finished in 1927 and contributed to the community via fundraising activities. It is significant because it is one of the oldest hotels in Flagstaff. It has played home to a number of famous people, including John Wayne, and it was the location of an early radio station that was operated by Mary Costigan, a pioneer in the field of the broadcasting industry. Over the course of many decades, the hotel has amassed a wide variety of ghost tales and mythology about haunted places, which contributes to the hotel's mystique as a revered institution. In the middle of the 1920s, when tourism was on the increase in Flagstaff, Arizona, the locals realized that there was a need for first-class lodgings to fulfill the expanding demand. The hotels that were already in the neighborhood were out of date and did not meet the requirements that were in place at the time. The establishment of a brand new, contemporary hotel in the center of Flagstaff was the result of a concerted effort that was initiated in answer to this need. At the beginning of the fundraising efforts, which started in April of 1926, famous residents made investments in the project, and the well-known author Zane Grey made a substantial gift. In only 1 month, the entire amount of money that was raised amounted to around $200,000, which was a significant amount for that time period. Following the acquisition of the necessary financial support, the building project was officially kicked off on June 8, 1926, when the ground was broken. Both the local post office, which had been in business from 1917 until 1927, and the building that housed the Coconino Sun newspaper firm, which is today known as the Monte V Cocktail Lounge, were integrated into the construction plans for the 73-room hotel. The local post office had been in existence while the hotel was being constructed. A one-of-a-kind personality was given to the facility as a result of the incorporation of historic components into the latest hotel design. In 1927, on the first day of the new year, the hotel opened its doors to the public. At first, it was known as the Community Hotel, which was a monument to the citizens of the town who had contributed to its establishment. The winner of a naming contest,
who was just 12 years old at the time, eventually decided to give the hotel the name Monte Vista, which means mountain view. This name is an excellent representation of the hotel's scenic location in the middle of the mountains that surround it. In Arizona, the Monte Vista Hotel has maintained its position as the oldest publicly owned commercial property for many decades, which is a monument to the community's unwavering dedication to this legendary institution. The hotel was not sold to a private investor until the early 1960s. This was the first time it had been sold. Now, the Monte Vista is recognized as one of the oldest hotels in Flagstaff, and it is included on the list of historic places maintained by the United States Registrar of Historic Places. This is a testament to the hotel's architectural and historical importance. In addition to its function as a leading accommodation destination, the Monte Vista Hotel was also an essential component in the early stages of radio transmission in Flagstaff. Mary Costigan, who was born in Detroit and was the second woman in the world to be given a radio broadcasting license, moved to Flagstaff in 1927 in order to provide assistance to her brother John and John Weatherford, who was John Weatherford's business partner, via the management of the Majestic Opera House, which is now known as the Orpheum. Mary took over the family firm once her brother's health began to deteriorate. She had been a supporter of the enterprise for many years. She went on to build a radio station with a power output of 25 watts behind the scenes at the Majestic Opera House. Her decision to relocate the radio station, KFXY, to the Monte Vista Hotel in 1929 resulted in the station being upgraded to a strong 100-watt station that broadcast for 3 hours each day. It is clear that there is a great deal of enthusiasm and expectation around this new technical innovation since the first broadcast from the site of the hotel attracted an audience of more than 400 inhabitants. In the historic downtown core of Flagstaff, the Hotel Monte Vista is now a revered monument that has stood the test of time. Throughout the years, the hotel has played host to a large number of notable visitors, including Hollywood giants such as John Wayne, Spencer Tracy, Humphrey Bogart, Clark Gable, Anthony Hopkins, Esther Williams, and Barbara Stanwyck. The hotel contains 73 rooms and suites that are spread out across 3 levels. Beyond its architectural and cultural legacy, the hotel's historical importance extends to other aspects of its history. Additionally, it has been included as a haunted destination on the television series Most Terrifying Places, which was shown on the Travel Channel in the year 2019. Although it is not possible to verify the validity of these ghost tales, they have contributed to the hotel's legend by adding an aura of mystery and intrigue to the establishment. It is reported that an elderly lady who had been staying at the hotel for many years never really checked out of room 305. This is one of the most well-known stories that has been told about the hotel. It has been said that her spectral presence has been seen sitting in a rocking chair near the window. Furthermore, for some inexplicable reason, the chair has been known to move of its own volition. Other eerie encounters have been reported by both staff and guests. These include the ghost of a bank robber greeting them with a cheery good morning, the spirits of murdered prostitutes haunting room 306, and the paranormal activity associated with the meat man in room 220. The meat man was a former boarder who allegedly hung raw meat from the chandelier before his untimely death. There is a story that surrounds one of the most famous visitors at the hotel, John Wayne, and it is perhaps one of the most interesting ghost tales. In the course of his stay in room 210, the famed actor said that he heard a knock at the door, which was then followed by a demand for room service. However, when he opened the door, he discovered that there was no one there. On more than one occasion, Wayne came face to face with this spectral bellboy, and other members of the staff have also reported seeing the spectral figure wandering throughout the building. Despite the fact that the truth behind these stories is still shrouded in mystery, there is no question that they have made a significant contribution to the rich tapestry of the Monte Vista Hotel's history and the hotel's everlasting charm. It is a monument to the resolve and foresight of the Flagstaff community that, over a century ago, came together to establish this one-of-a-kind jewel of northern Arizona. The Hotel Monte Vista continues to welcome people from all over the globe, and it stands as a testament to the city's ability to persevere and see the big picture. By virtue of its architectural legacy, cultural relevance, and compelling legend, the Monte Vista Hotel continues to be a landmark that endures. It provides guests with the opportunity to experience a piece of Flagstaff's illustrious history while also taking advantage of contemporary conveniences and services. Pierce Mansion, which is located in Gardner, Massachusetts, commands attention at the crossroads of West Broadway and Union Street because of its towering architecture. When seen from the outside, the traditional Victorian is the ideal example of a haunted home because of its grey siding and black shutters. When it comes to the inside, the situation is much more dire, to the point that the couple who owned the house from 2008 to 2015 only resided there for a span of 2 years until they felt they had no other option than to displace themselves. On the other hand, in contrast to the majority of other mansions in the nation that are infamously haunted, the S.K. Pierce Mansion was never the location of any renowned crime. In fact, it was the ideal house of a rich businessman and his family, but it turned out to be a nightmare almost immediately after it was finished being built in the year 1875. In honor of its former owner, the wealthy furniture maker Sylvester Knowlton Pierce, the home, which encompasses an impressive 6,661 square feet, was given the name Sylvester Knowlton Pierce. It was a wonder for its day, since it was outfitted with elements that were considered to be state-of-the-art at the time, such as gas lighting in every room, a large Winthrop furnace, and running water throughout the whole building. Pierce did not try to save money while he was constructing the three-story house, but unfortunately, he did not have enough time to appreciate the results of his effort before a terrible accident occurred. Susan Pierce, Pierce's wife, died away from a flesh-eating bacterial illness only 2 weeks after they had moved into their new home. The unfortunate reality is that she would not be the last member of the Pierce family to pass away in the home. In the year 1888, when S.K. Pierce passed away, at home, the house was left in his will to his second wife, Ellen Pierce, who in turn passed away at the same location. After that, the house was left to S.K.'s 3 sons, who fought for years over who would control the family home and the furniture company. Eventually, the 2 oldest sons moved out of the mansion. On the other hand, Edward Pierce, the youngest son, did not experience any success or enjoyment as a consequence of his acquisition of power over the Victorian. At a tragic turn of events, his daughter Rachel Pierce, who was just 2 years old, passed away at the house due to a bacterial illness. Later, once the family money was reduced as a result of the Great Depression, Edward and his wife decided to turn the home into a boarding house in order to make ends meet. When the home was in the process of breaking apart in 1965, Edward was compelled to give it away to a friend. This was the first time that ownership of the house had been transferred to a person who was not a member of the Pierce family since the house was built. Ano Sori, a native of Gardner and a veteran of World War II who resided in the mansion during the time that it was used as a boarding house, was the 5th and last person to be proven to have passed away in the home. He died of burns in the main bedroom in 1963, when he was 49 years old, when his mattress caught fire for unknown reasons before his death. Since then, a number of guests and past inhabitants have reported experiencing a similar experience in the main bedroom. For a brief while, they are confronted with the transient aroma of something that is burning. According to legend, the ghosts of the deceased members of the Pierce family are also thought to make their presence known. There have been several accounts of a ghost that resembles a kid, who is believed to be Rachel Pierce, playing in the rooms located on the 3rd level. However, it is eerie to note that these 5 are not the only ghosts that are still present in the home. During the 2 years that Edwin Gonzalez and Lillian Otero resided there, 2009 to 2011, numerous neighbors reported seeing a little kid with yellow hair running back and forth between their windows. This is a particularly unsettling sight when one takes into consideration the fact that the couple did not have any children of their own. On the other hand, their own personal experiences inside the house were far more upsetting. Edwin and Lillian experienced many creatures around the home, including a shadow figure in the basement and a dark-haired lady with a frightening grin who may or may not have attempted to possess Lillian. In addition, they heard footsteps that did not belong to them, doors that slammed, and things that moved on their own. The narrative of these individuals, which is filled with horrible incidents such as these, was finally written up in a book titled Bones in the Basement by Joni Mayen. In the basement, there were really bones, as the spoiler will reveal. In addition to shadow figures and possessions, it is important to point out that not all of the ghosts who haunt the S.K. Pierce mansion are gloomy and potentially dangerous. The home has been visited by a large number of psychic mediums and paranormal investigation organizations since the early 2000s. The majority of these individuals have described the same few spirits each time they have been there. One of these spirits is Maddie Cornwall, the young nanny who was responsible for the care of the Pierce children. There is a widespread belief that the mansion was the only location that really felt like home to her. It is also thought that her ghost serves as a guardian of the house, ensuring that the other spirits are kept in control and warding off any unwanted visitors. However, the doors of the haunted Victorian will soon be opened, and the public will be let inside. After the present owners have completed their renovations, they want to make the mansion available for historical tours and overnight stays. The current owners purchased the property without having seen it in April of 2015. Los Angeles, in the rugged Benedict Canyon, is a home constructed in the Craftsman style in 1930. One of Hollywood's most renowned performers formerly lived in this mansion. From the exterior, the property seems like it came right out of a fantasy movie, what with its stone staircases, honeycomb glass windows, and tall turret. On the other hand, 9820 Easton Drive is where things really stand. The house was once owned by Jean Harlow and Paul Byrne, an actress and film producer, however it is more often referred to as the Harlow/Byrne house. The pair is the one whose name is on the property. Tragically, the couple had only been married for 2 months when the wedding took place. A 38mm pistol was found in the possession of the deceased Paul Byrne on September 5, 1932, along with a single gunshot wound to the head. When house staff discovered Byrne's body, they contacted MGM, the studio where he worked, rather than the authorities. There Byrne worked. There is a widespread belief including among Byrne's film industry colleagues that he was really murdered and that the studio covered it up to protect Harlow's career. This is so even if the authorities have since concluded that he committed himself of his own will. Although Byrne's death was tragic, he was far from the first owner of the house to meet an untimely end. A well-known hairdresser named J. Sebring bought the property in 1963. A year down the road, Sebring began dating actress-in-training Sharon Tate. They were very close friends up until the night of August 9, 1969, when the Manson family group murdered them. They remained very close friends even after the pair ended their relationship. Tate and her husband Roman Polanski were renting a home when Sebring, coffee heiress Abigail Folger, and Wojciech Frykowski, who was also Folger's lover, were staying with Tate when she was 8 months pregnant. This would be Tate and her husband's first kid. Even if the terrifying events of that night did not occur at the Harlow/Byrne house, a mysterious interview supposedly conducted with Tate a year before she passed away suggests a disturbing connection to the house. With the heading Sharon Tate's Preview of Murder, Fate magazine published an article in 1970 with an interview with journalist Dick Kleiner and Judy Tate. As they continue talking, Tate reminisces of a terrible incident that happened to her one night when she was alone at Sebring's house. Allegedly, Tate woke up in the middle of the night and discovered an unusual, little man in her bedroom. According to the story, she was taken aback by what she saw. Suddenly, she bolted from the apartment and dashed down the stairs, where she discovered a man with a severed neck, bound and gagged. She bolted from the room in a fit of terror. According to the report, she had a premonition that the encounter was more than just a dream. It predicted the terrible fate that befell her and Sebring when they were together. Despite the vehement denials from Tate's loved ones, the story seemed convinced many that the home had been visited by Paul Byrne's ghost, who had come to warn of impending doom. Even while the present owner, who bought the land from J. Sebring's parents in 1970, insists that he and his wife have never seen anything paranormal in their time there, the eerie coincidences that have transpired are hard to ignore. At the tender age of 26, two Hollywood actresses Harlow and Tate both departed this world. Not only did Byrne and Sebring die too soon, but so did their friends Tate and Harlow. Sometimes known as Chloe, was a slave who was purportedly held by Clark and Sarah Woodruff. She is considered to be the most well-known of the claimed spirits associated with the Myrtles. Clark Woodruff allegedly exerted pressure or coerced Chloe into becoming his mistress, as suggested by one of the stories. According to some interpretations of the tale, Chloe is seen listening in via keyholes in order to get information of Clark Woodruff's financial activities or for other reasons. In order to conceal the fact that she had one of her ears severed after being apprehended, she donned a green turban. This was done either by Clark or by Sarah Woodruff. We would like to take this opportunity to welcome you back to another episode of our series, which is a blend of history and mystery. Today, we will be exploring the captivating city of Savannah, Georgia. Savannah is not simply a city, it is also a storyteller, with each corner whispering mysteries of the past. As a result of its enticing Spanish moss, cobblestone streets, and the warm light of old-world street lamps, Savannah is becoming more popular. There is a very intriguing story that revolves around the Mercer-Williams house, which is located at 429 Bull Street. Today, we will unveil one of the layers of this story. This magnificent Italianate home is not only a work of art in terms of architecture, but it is also a repository of unsettling secrets and vivid histories that seem to be unbound by the passage of time. It was in the 1860s that General Hugh Mercer gave the great New York architect John S. Norris the task of bringing his idea of an extravagant home to reality. This is where our narrative starts. However, the Civil War put a kink into their plans, and Mercer was never able to see the completion of the mansion of his dreams. In 1868, John R. Wilder became the first person to live in the mansion, which is when it was first brought to the attention of Savannah's social scene. Until the 1960s, when Jim Williams, a well-known restorationist and antiquities collector, poured new life into the walls of the home, the house remained calmly as the decades passed, seeing the shifting tides of time. The efforts that Williams made were not only about restoring things, rather, they were about resurrecting things. Williams's remarkable collection of antiquities, which included things with Imperial Russian connections and relics from Napoleon's reign, led to the Mercer-Williams house quickly regaining its position as the crown jewel of Savannah's historic area. This was accomplished while the house was still holding Williams's collection. It is not the beauty of the Mercer-Williams house or the antiques that keep the locals talking about it, rather, it is the echoes of the past that appear to reverberate through the hallways of the house. Not only is the house notorious for its appearance, but it is also famed for being the location of cases of unexplained deaths and renowned ghost tales. As a result, it is a common feature on the maps of Savannah's ghost tours. The first instance of tragedy occurred in 1969, when a small boy named Tommy Downs passed away after falling from the roof. A number of years later, the home would become the location of a more ominous occurrence, which was the shooting death of Danny Hansford by Jim Williams. Williams's own inexplicable death in the same room in which he was acquitted was the only thing that brought an end to the questions that surrounded Hansford's killing and Williams' following trials. A web of ghost stories and legends has been woven as a result of these incidents, and they continue to circulate even to this day. As a result of the legend that surrounds the building site of the house, which is supposedly located over the unmarked graves of yellow fever victims, some people feel that the home's reputation for being haunted is something that contributes to its mystique. Dorothy Kingery, Williams's sister and the current owner of the home, emphasizes the historical and architectural value of the building during museum visits, despite the fact that it is often referred to as a haunted house. However, the ghost tales continue to flourish, which is fed by reports of lights and noises that cannot be explained around the time of Christmas, which was Williams's favorite time to hold extravagant parties. Many guests have reported catching brief glimpses of a young kid on the balcony or hearing the distant sounds of a party that should no longer exist. Although guests of today may not locate the huge celebrations of yesteryear, they have reported seeing or hearing these things. Is it only the wind, or is the Mercer-Williams house reliving the most exciting days of its history in the stillness of the night? As we come to the close of our excursion into the dark corners of Savannah, we leave you with a mixture of history and mystery that makes this city, and the Mercer-Williams house in particular, a fascinating study of most prestigious club in the nation. The Maidstone is off the narrow two-lane Montauk Highway in East Hampton. Grey Gardens, a hidden American treasure, is a few right turns away among towering trees. Like its lengthy history of fierce woman owners, the 6,652 square foot Lily Pond Lane and West End Road home defies. Grey Gardens' shingle-clad front, sage green shutters, diamond-cut arts and craft-style windows, and lush gardens may be familiar from the Maysles Brothers' 1975 Filth and Raccoon Bone documentary. This may be your first National Treasure visit. The deteriorating mansion almost fell beneath high society dropouts Big Edie and Little Edie Bale, aunt and cousin of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and their 52 cats. Despite numerous tales, the house thrived at its worst. Beyond their grandeur, the mansion's walls teach life's ups and downs. Grey Gardens started as an Atlantic Ocean property before becoming a sentient Hollywood starlet in a luxury zip code. Grey Gardens was speculated before construction, but its cinematic premiere made it famous. F. bought 3 West End Road 2 years after 1895. Margaret Bagg Phillips and Stanhope Phillips hired Joseph Greenleaf Thorpe to build their ideal house. After land title complications delayed development, Mr. Phillips died suddenly, leaving his wife considerable fortune. Mrs. Phillips burned her husband's bones before an examination, sparking aristocratic New York City speculation. The 1901 New York Times said that Mr. Phillips' brothers accused her of exploiting her late husband for wealth. The court addressed the East Hampton property's land concerns, allowing her to construct the mansion in the early 1900s. It was sold to coal company president Robert C. Hill in 1913. Ms. Anna Gilman Hill, an accomplished gardener, rapidly turned their new vacation house into a lush haven. She surrounded the climbing rose, lavender, phlox, and delphinium garden with beautiful Spanish concrete walls. Grey Gardens had pastel dunes, cement walls, and sea mist. Big and Little Edie Bale, who made it famous, bought it from the Hills in 1923 after 10 years. Big Edie was born in 1895 to a rich judge and wife. Major John Vernou Bouvier Jr. upheld the French nobility mystique from Gilded Age pride. Big Edie's siblings were twin sisters Michelle and Maud Bouvier, big brother William Sargent Bouvier, who died of alcoholism in 1929, and small brother John Black Jack Vernou Bouvier III. Lasada, Onassis East Hampton home, and their Manhattan family house on the Carlisle Hotel site were their residences. Big Edie, a superb singer and pianist, was advised to marry. Big Edie, 22, married 36-year-old Felon Bale Sr., her father's legal partner, in 1917. The Beals moved into an Upper East Side apartment with a full crew, including chauffeurs, see their 1920s car in front of Grey Gardens. Born, Little Edie, 1917, Felon Bale Jr. 1920, Bouvier, 1922. Grey Gardens was bought in 1923, shortly after their youngest was born. Big Edie adored Grey Gardens' freedom. Her family spent most summers and weekends there. Big Edie's bohemian inclinations increased at Grey Gardens, embarrassing her husband. After parting in the early 1930s, Big Edie hired a chef, chauffeur, 2 housekeepers, and a governess, according to census statistics. Meanwhile, her family boarded Little Edie at Miss Porter's, the Connecticut finishing school her cousins Onassis and Radziwill attended. When she was 13 and attending Spence, a Manhattan girls' a mid-1930s graduate, Edie debuted at the Pierre Hotel dinner with other wealthy young ladies. Edie was beautiful, intellectual, and loved reading, theater, and acting like her mother. She was scolded for these weaknesses and taught that her marriageability was her finest quality because she needed a mate to survive. In the 1940s, she visited her mother in East Hampton and Palm Beach from Manhattan. She likes us. The Interior Secretary's affair with Captain Julius Captain Krug. Big Edie struggled while Little Edie thrived. Felon Sr. divorced her by telegraph in 1946, giving her Grey Gardens ownership and child maintenance but no alimony. In 1940, her mother died. At her son's wedding, her father chastised her for dressing as an opera star. When Major John Vernou Bouvier Jr. died in 1948, his money had fallen, and Big Edie's twin sisters got most of his estate while her sons received a little. Grey Gardens personnel couldn't be paid on her $300 monthly budget for herself and little Edie, now $4,500. This home would die. Early in the 1950s, Big Edie and pianist Gould Strong, who may have lived there in the 1940s, divorced up. Little Edie began her entertainment career in 1952 at the Barbizon Hotel in NYC. Because Big Edie couldn't support her, she missed the Broadway audition and returned to East Hampton. Each Edie perceived Grey Gardens as their paradise and an obstacle to their theatrical goals. Little Edie's father died in 1956, limiting their money, yet the mother-daughter duo mixed in East Hampton. At the Sea Spray Inn, one of their favorite old haunts, they met Tom Logan, a former rodeo cowboy they asked to live with them for chores. Despite his efforts, the gravel driveway was overgrown and had an abandoned automobile with a key in its ignition. Logan died of sickness or consumption on his kitchen cot in 1964, destroying the house. Even though little Edie attended JFK's inauguration, the Beals became more secretive and suspicious in the 1960s after Big Edie's arthritis and a party theft. 2 decades after little Edie retired to East Hampton, their grand piano was a broken antique and the main floor was covered with cat fur, cobwebs, and dust. Since the ladies went upstairs and sold products, the home seemed empty. Grey Gardens closed the decade with a peculiar mix of wealth and poverty. East Hampton invaded Grey Gardens in 1971 demanding safety. The Suffolk County Board of Health ordered the Beals to clean Grey Gardens or leave. Lee Radziwill's then-boyfriend, artist Peter Beard, alleged inspectors hosed the property, damaging it and scaring the residents. A neighbor told New York Magazine about these instances. Grey Gardens became renowned after publication. With Radziwill in Montauk throughout the attack, Onassis and her wealthy husband Aristotle repaired. Radziwill wanted her quirky aunt with her Long Island lockjaw and wonderful singing voice to narrate her Lasada youth documentary. She met Gimme Shelter director David and Al Maysles via Beard. Both Maysles brothers met Big and Little Edie at Grey Gardens and began filming. In the video, renovations included water and heat for 2 upstairs rooms, painting over old wallpaper, and bringing the property up to code for an inspection. The filmmakers spotted 3 stars home being the third. Big and Little Edie were thrilled to provide Oscar-worthy performances when Radziwill's film was cancelled. That summer was released in 2018. Big and Little Edie relocated 2 twin beds to a warmer upstairs bedroom in 1973 for shooting. They cooked and did almost everything else on a bedside hotplate, which their cats ate. Big and Little Edie's campy depiction of their existence in this chamber and the magnificent environment around their rotting house is beautiful, hilarious, and heartbreaking. Grey Gardens passed inspection, but video shows worse conditions. The ladies spend most of their time at the estate alone, save for Brooks, a handyman, Jerry, a young errand boy and companion, and Lois Wright, a family friend and sometimes roommate. The Verité documentary Grey Gardens started reality TV. Honest, voyeuristic, intrusive minimalist film without music, narrator, reenactments, or interviews. The home becomes a character as the camera observes the women's unprompted lives, symbolizing their status as high society rebels who reject patriarchal rule. Many followers question why celebrities chose this lifestyle aside quirkiness since they are scrutinized. While black mold and toxoplasmosis may explain them, we'll never know what brought promising young women to such unexpected situations. We may rethink labeling them abnormal. Life persisted for a few years after Grey Gardens lost its shine. Wright and the Beals fed the cats to keep the rodents away and Buster, the head honcho raccoon, who they believed wouldn't revolt if fed well. He saw Big Edie and Little Edie in Manhattan news conferences. Massive leg injury from Big Edie's 1977 fall was untreated. One book by Wright said, Grey Gardens deteriorated. The home was ill. It seemed disturbed. Old homes vibe. Big Edie refused hospitalization and died of pneumonia at 82. Little Edie worked in Manhattan and had her own cabaret act until she went to California, Canada, then Bal Harbor, Florida, where she died aged 84 in 2002. Grey Gardens excels. Imaginative people may see its beauty in decay. Despite the real estate agent's reluctance, Washington Post journalist Sally Quinn and her husband, Ben Bradley, investigated the ruins in 1979. Quinn went in alone on a hot August day since Bradley was allergic to animals and perished in minutes. 52 dead wild cats were found. No, not exactly. Cats were crawling all over, and there were raccoon skulls on the front porch, she tells House Beautiful. Edie was standing on the front porch waiting for me, he says, with a sweater wrapped around her waist as a skirt, a scarf on her head, probably because of the fleas, and masses of red lipstick smeared around her face, when she said, "Welcome to Grey Gardens," as though it was some fabulous palace. As they arrived, Little Edie pirouetted and murmured, "All it needs is another deal." I told Little Edie she could leave it broom clean or leave all the furniture and everything in it, Quinn remembers. Little Edie picked the latter, and Quinn discovered antiques heaped to the ceiling in the attic and the tiny former maid's room behind the so-called kitchen. Quinn resumed smoking with excitement. Quinn persevered despite relatives and friends preparing an intervention. Contractor, pull it down. Quinn invited everyone to join the year-long endeavor. She restored old iron beds and clawfoot bathtubs and recreated what couldn't be mended to fit the period, such the curtains in the living room were still hanging but were in shreds, so I took the fabric to a decorator to match them. In summer 2015, Liz Lang, a notable early-aughts maternity wear designer and FIG creative director, leased the mansion and began the Just Enough Family, a podcast about her family with writer Ariel Levy. Quinn sold it for $15 million. Lang informed the New York Times that the Beals' relics include a garden plot proclaiming Spot Bale, a nobler gentleman never lived, cherished by everyone who knew him, died May 29, 1942. Adler's colorful wasp chintzy design includes turquoise shutter paint, blue leopard print wallpaper, and a rattan couch with Kelly green pillows. Lang, her college best friend Jonathan Adler, interior designer Mark D. Sykes, and landscape designer Deborah Nevins renovated the house and yard. Lang told Home Beautiful the home is being restored, not renovated. We tried really hard to be very, very respectful of the fact that it is an over 100-year-old house, and we weren't trying to make it look like a new house, she says. Lang rescued moldings, doors, and windows before starting the renovation, and her contractors replaced what they couldn't restore with comparable parts to make the house seem as the Beals bought it. We utilized restoration glass instead of new windows. Early 1900s language. Langley. The house's detailed documentation allowed the crew to duplicate the building as closely as feasible. Lang updated the front porch columns for the early 1900s. The diamond lattice windows were bigger when Lang acquired it. Even the upgrades to make the home more comfortable for her family enhanced the house's and garden's attractiveness. Lang added French doors to solid walls on the main level for movement and an almost unbroken view of the gardens. I'm continuously in the desire for something new, Lang adds, but she won't reconstruct additional rooms. Living room textiles are brown, white, and pastel blue. Lang enjoys her home, gardening, and history today.
Normal phenomena, haunted homes, and ghost tales are often considered to be the stuff of urban legend. Nonetheless, the legal canon has preserved at least one case involving such a subjective and notoriously hard-to-prove issue. Just 10 minutes away, over the Tappan Zee Bridge over the Hudson River, is the first American home to be officially recognized as haunted. This house is located in Sleepy Hollow, the setting for Rip Van Winkle's The Legend of the Headless Horseman, and is easily accessible by car. The home's status as a legally haunted property is shocking in and of itself, but the fact that it's a Victorian and located near Sleepy Hollow may be less so. Is the area prone to extraterrestrials because of some quirk of its geography? A very desirable cul-de-sac in the commuting town of Nyack is Lavater Place. The horizontal wood paneling adorns the three-story clapboard Victorian at number 1, which dates back to 1890. Almost every room and window offers breathtaking views of the river from its hilltop position, which is set back behind a front lawn. A fenced-in pool, a lovely wraparound porch, and a gorgeous tower are some of its highlights. Once inside, you'll find 8 bedrooms and 4.5 bathrooms. Despite its huge rooms, the property was thoughtfully laid up to make you feel right at home with its many nooks and little areas cut out of the bigger ones. Stained glass windows, hardwood flooring, and ornate moldings are just a few examples of the period elements. Lucky for us, one Lavater hasn't been the scene of any tragic or well-recognized killings. Rather, the legends of the hauntings originated with an essay titled Our Haunted House on the Hudson, published in Reader's Digest in the middle of the 1970s. The piece was written by Helen Ackley, a resident of the area, who was married to George Ackley and the mother of 4 children who are now adults. While the family lived, happy, in the house, she wrote about their numerous spectral roommates in it. Some hauntings were experienced by both parents. Notably, George claims to have seen 2 ghostly feet, one wearing moccasins, pass him in the corridor above the staircase he was standing on, while Helen, who was painting the doorway, saw a man appear dressed in colonial or Revolutionary War clothing. Every night, something would shake Cynthia's bed until she gently begged the room to let her sleep in. She was a high school student at the time, what most people would find scary. The Ackleys really embraced. They saw it as a sign that the spirits were all kind, and they eventually came to think of them as family. When Helen first arrived at the home, The neighborhood youngsters joked, "Lady, you know you just bought a haunted house, right?" Since they felt the place was haunted even before they moved there. Helen was prepared to downsize in 1989, some 25 years after the Ackleys had moved into One Levita Place and 15 years after the story had been published, confirming the house's haunted image. As a result, she chose Ellis Realty's Richard Ellis to list the residence. Helen was overjoyed when a young couple named Jeffrey and Patricia Stambovsky expressed their eagerness to begin the contract process for the property, which was advertised at somewhat under $800,000. While Ellis recalls that Helen did reveal the haunted nature in casual conversations, and according to Cynthia, she even refused to sign the contract until she had a conversation with the Stambovskys about it. The Stambovskys assert that a contractor had informed them about the local folklore and that they would not have wanted to purchase the property if they had known. Even though Jeffrey has always said he doesn't believe in ghosts, he does think that the market may be influenced by those who do. What the Stambovskys learned from Helen and Ellis, if anything, will remain a mystery as long as these encounters are not well recorded. Helen got the down payment, but soon after she found out the Stambovskys wanted out. They sued her for intentionally misrepresenting the home's condition by failing to reveal the spirits. Helen was originally exempt from the need to inform the Stambovskys about the haunted home tales, and the court rejected Stambovsky's claim that Helen's tales diminished the property's worth. Caveat emptor, or buyer beware in Latin, was the guiding principle under which New York State functioned. In other words, before buying a home, it is the buyer's, and not the seller's, obligation to do their research and ask any questions they may have. The court reasoned in his decision that hiring a clairvoyant would just add additional complexity to the already lengthy process of buying a property, which already involves an appraiser, contractor, realtor, and others. The Stambovskys were dissatisfied with the outcome and took their case to the highest court in New York, the Supreme Court. The original rejection was overturned by Justice Rubin and two other justices who wrote the majority judgment, which held that the buyer beware proviso shouldn't be used here as the flaw isn't tangible. The seller should disclose any stigmatized information, such as a history of criminal activity or a negative reputation in the area, since these factors might reduce the property's market value. Since Helen had already promoted the myth to the public and media, she would be unable to revise or contradict it while under oath. The court specifically stated, having reported the ghost's presence in both a national publication and the local press, defendant is estopped to deny their existence and, as a matter of law, the house is haunted. According to legal expert Eric Goldman, Helen owed the Stambovskys that same level of promotional effort because of her conduct before the litigation. He continued by saying that Goldman doesn't think the court was really considering creating a new precedent. To find a fair and equitable resolution, the court seemed to have treated it as a one-off type of ruling, as the author puts it. This particular line out of a court opinion is in the top 10 most remarkable statements I've ever seen a court make, he adds, adding that although the court did apply the standard as if the house were legally haunted, ghost stories rarely make it into courtrooms, especially not as verifiable evidence, because the public can and does easily misunderstand such claims. At Santa Clara University, Goldman teaches a variety of courses, including those on advertising law, property law, and contracts law. Despite the new interpretation of property disclosure rules having just been in place for a few months, he emphasized that it is still pervasive. Since buyers in the modern day have access to a wealth of information about potential homes, he opines that things would most certainly turn out differently in this era of digitalization. Since then, one Lavater place has changed owners several times. Ellis speculates that the repeated changes may be due to the energy there, since he finds it rare for a property like this to change hands so often. However, he believes it's not vital to report a supposed haunting. However, not a single one of the succeeding owners, including some famous people, has ever claimed to have seen specters. Adam Brooks, who co-wrote Practical Magic's script, resided there in the late 90s. He was succeeded by Ingrid Michaelson, who remained a resident until her 2015 sale, when it was marketed for $1.9 million. She never once brings up anything supernatural, and she certainly didn't hold the spirits responsible for their departure. Matisyahu, a musician, also resided there for 4 years, from 2014 to 2019.
State Penitentiary, launching in Philadelphia in 1829, was a groundbreaking criminal justice experiment. ESP, constructed by British architect John Haviland, was the world's first real penitentiary, built to instill penitence and reformation in prisoners by harsh solitary confinement. ESP, founded by the Philadelphia Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons, was a major shift from early 19th century dismal, brutal prisons. Haviland's wagon wheel design, with 7 wings of cells spreading from a central hub, enabled guards to monitor hundreds of convicts from one location. ESP, the most costly public building in the nation at the time, cost $780,000, nearly $14 million now. Modern conveniences like central heating, running water, and flush toilets in each cell made it stand apart from the White House. In October 1829, burglar Charles Williams became ESP's first prisoner, starting a new penology period. The redeeming power of isolation was central to ESP's ideology. Quaker-inspired Pennsylvania system taught that full seclusion from corrupting offenders, honest work, and religious meditation may awaken a criminal's conscience and lead to sincere repentance. Each convict spent 23 hours a day alone in a modest 8 by 12 foot cell with just a Bible, work items, and a tiny exercise yard. Thick walls and one skylit window provided near total sensory isolation. Prisoners exited their cells wearing hoods to avoid human contact and received meals via a door gap. Cell doors carved away from one another prevented convicts from seeing their neighbors, reinforcing isolation. The public were fascinated by ESP's quiet, shrouded specters and gloomy atmosphere. Charles Dickens and Alexis de Tocqueville visited the prison early on to examine this remarkable social engineering project. Dickens was uneasy, stating, "I hold this slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain to be immeasurably worse than any torture of the body." Despite its noble goals, the Pennsylvania system frequently tortured its victims psychologically. Many detainees had hallucinations, delusions, and self-harm due to prolonged isolation. The suicide rate at ESP was 5 times higher than other jails. In the terrible stillness of their cells, many captives went insane rather than ruminating on their faults. As the 19th century turned to the 20th, ESP's utopian vision faded. By 1913, the Pennsylvania system was abandoned due to overcrowding. ESP innovated with tailored treatment regimens and one of the nation's first prison synagogues, but it failed to meet its ambitious reformation goals. Famous detainees passed through ESP's towering walls in its final years. Al Capone's first jail term at ESP was 8 months for carrying a hidden handgun in 1929. Capone had oriental carpets, elegant furnishings, and a cabinet radio due to his riches and power. Willie Sutton, a successful bank robber and jailbreaker, attended ESP in the 1940s. ESP began the mid-20th century with an outdated jail in trouble. Overcrowding, failing facilities, and declining budgets took their toll. ESP was ranked the second worst jail in the nation for cleanliness in 1945, with some places unsuitable for human life. Conditions worsened throughout the decades until the institution closed in 1971 after 142 years. ESP collapsed after being abandoned. Urban explorers and vandals poked through its deteriorating exterior, while wildcats lived in the echoing cell blocks. In the late 1980s, a devoted preservationist organization saved ESP from destruction. The jail became a museum and historic monument in 1994 after considerable repair. Eastern State Penitentiary, a National Historic Landmark, attracts hundreds of thousands of people annually. Al Capone's luxurious cell and the cramped isolation wings are seen during daytime excursions. ESP's convoluted history is told by Steve Buscemi on an audio tour. Each fall, the cell blocks become terror behind the walls, a massive haunted house that ranks among the scariest in the country. Even as tourists gaze at ESP's decaying walls and lurid stories, the prison's history shapes America's crime, punishment, and rehabilitation debate. ESP is a tangible relic of a past when reformers saw jails as crucibles for salvation and a warning of how lofty ideals may lead to permanent pain at a time when mass imprisonment is under review. Eastern State Penitentiary gives visitors an unflinching look inside one of America's most influential prisons and asks us to consider what lessons it can teach us as we balance justice and mercy in a free society.
The majority of Hawaiians call Oahu the gathering place, home. The island is well known for its many historical monuments, stunning beaches, and surfing. Plus, Honolulu International Airport, one of the busiest airports in the world, is probably going to be on your route if you're planning on seeing the attractions there. HNL. Passengers often compliment the cleanliness, efficiency, and ease of navigation at Honolulu International Airport, which is conveniently located 5 miles northwest of downtown Honolulu and 10 miles northwest of Waikiki Beach. Thanks especially to the airport's many outdoor spaces and the kind staff who live out the aloha spirit. So let's take a look at the airport's background and see what makes it so special now. Part of a private estate was purchased in 1925 with funds allotted for the construction of an airport and landing field on the island. In the fall of that year, Commander John Rogers and his crew made an effort to fly the first transoceanic journey between the mainland of the United States and Hawaii. They crashed into the Pacific after running out of gasoline around 365 miles from Oahu. The daring gang made sails out of the plane's wings and headed for shore. They ran out of food on day 3 and ran out of water on day 6. Fortunately, they were greeted as heroes when they arrived ashore in Kauai on day 10, after seeing it and quickly locating a submarine that towed them safely. Even though they had to land, they set a new record for a transoceanic journey that lasted for over 5 years. In addition, the complex is home to 8 separate federal government agencies: the FAA, USDA, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, DEA, FWS, U.S. Postal Service, TSA, and CDC. And there are a number of convenient transit choices available at Honolulu International Airport. There are a total of 6 rental vehicle businesses on site, with 4 more in the immediate vicinity. Alternatively, cab stands are just outside the baggage claim areas, so you may easily hail one if you choose. The convenient Speedy Shuttle is another choice. It will get you to your hotel, house, or workplace without ever having to lift a finger. Naturally, the airport is serviced by a plethora of additional pre-arranged ground transportation services. You may also take use of the city's bus system, which leaves around once every half an hour. All forms of ground transportation, including Honolulu International Airport, are wheelchair accessible. Request our porter services, and we will gladly help you board and disembark, as well as with public transit. On top of that, there is a complimentary shuttle service that runs all across the airport. The service also offers curbside loading and unloading, and there are many TTYs accessible for those who are deaf or hard of hearing. Your guide or service dog is also welcome at the airport. While you're waiting for your flight, you may do a lot of activities at Honolulu International Airport. There is an abundance of food and shopping opportunities, as previously stated. If you'd rather unwind, there's complimentary Hawaiian music and dancing in the lobby. On the other hand, if you're in the mood for some greenery, you'll like the cultural gardens that are spread out over several areas. These gardens, created in 1962 by Richard C. Tong, provide a relaxing retreat for tired tourists and are influenced by Hawaii, Japan, and China. A network of bridges, stepping stones, and paths links the three gardens, while the meandering streams stand for the melting pot of Hawaiian cultures. There are a number of beautiful sculptures as well. In 1927, the John Rogers Airport was named after the pioneering pilot in recognition of this remarkable achievement. The property was enlarged and enhanced as work at the facility persisted throughout the years. The military assumed command of all airports in the territories after the Pearl Harbor assault. Several upgrades were made to the airport during WW II to meet military requirements. Upon its handover to the territory in 1946, John Rogers Airport was rechristened Honolulu Airport. International was added to its name in 1951. Over the years, construction and development continued, culminating in the 1962 dedication of a new terminal. Since then, the airport in Honolulu has undergone continuous expansion and modernization to accommodate the ever-growing number of passengers. Present-day operations at the 520-acre airport include 4 runways, the longest of which is the 12,000-foot reef runway, the world's first significant runway constructed totally offshore. There are 27 airlines that fly there, including 4 commuter planes and 3 inter-island flights. The facility serves over 50,000 passengers daily. The Statehood Mosaic is another one-of-a-kind exhibit that celebrates the 50th anniversary of Hawaii's statehood via the artwork of children from kindergarten through 12th grade throughout the United States. The vibrant and joyful moments capture the essence of the kids' love for the beautiful state of Hawaii. Many Hawaiians have gone above and above to improve living conditions all across the globe, not only in the Pacific Asia area. The airport's Gallery of Legends now features tributes to these selfless people, courtesy of the Pacific Asia Travel Association, PATA. Remember the awardees by thinking about the good things they have done. A 3/4 scale replica of an Army P-12 Navy F-4, the final biplane manufactured during the interwar era, hangs from the ceiling in the atrium area, so history aficionados will definitely want to pay special attention there. Subsidiary to the model aircraft is a 20 by 20 terrazzo floor map of Oahu, depicting the airfields and strips that were in use toward the conclusion of WW II. Also included are images of some of the first aircraft to land in Hawaii. Once you've taken in those, raise your eyes to the skies once again to see the Sikorsky S-43 Baby Clipper toy aircraft. The Pacific Aerospace Museum, which evolved into the Pacific Aviation Museum of Pearl Harbor, housed it before it landed at Honolulu International Airport. Be sure to pass by the Navy model PN-9 that John Rogers and his crew flew in on their historic journey as you make your way south down the Central Concourse. When compared to other airports, Honolulu International Airport offers a lot of great services and facilities, and that should only become better in the future thanks to the many upgrades that are now under construction. Over the next few years, we want to elevate the airport to the level of a world-class facility, which will improve the experience for visitors and allow us to fulfill the growing demand. The devil legend is real. The reports of individuals who saw or heard him vary as much as the accounts themselves. A beast from a lonely, bleak marsh has been said to roam at night for almost 250 years. Due to the growing interest in the occult, Jersey Devil stories now incorporate popular belief and South Jersey history. You must know where the Jersey Devil was born to understand his folklore. This remote southern New Jersey region is about 1,700 square miles. It's a huge aquifer surrounded by white cedar woods. The shadows are dense and the air is calm and cold. Cedar trees in the marsh turn the stream's scarlet tannin. Pygmy forests have miniature trees. It hosts 27 orchid species despite its bleak reputation. Early on, the cedar swamps hampered progress. Traditional Indian paths persist. Stagecoaches took other routes. Both paved and sandy roads exist. Roads go to Hog Wallow, Double Trouble, Suey Place, and Mary Ann Furnace. The first New Jersey colonists chose these names. Pine Barrens is where the Jersey Devil was born. Famous stories have place at Leeds Point. He was born in a thunderstorm in 1735 to an unidentified Quaker mother. Room was lighted by flickering candles. Wind screamed. Not everyone felt she was a witch. The destitute woman known as Mother Leeds may have had 12 additional children. The child was born deformed, say others. She supposedly cursed the child due to her financial misery. Some stories say the baby was born properly, but acquired a large tail, cloven feet, a gigantic horse-like head, winged shoulders, and an elongated torso. According to legend, the child was imprisoned until it escaped via the chimney or basement door. Devil from Jersey has invaded the globe. Another version describes a Leeds Point girl falling for a British soldier. The British came to Batstow because privateers used its iron furnaces. The 1778 Battle of Chestnut Neck was crucial to the American Revolution. Locals opposed the marriage because they believed her connection betrayed their trust. At the girl, they cursed. According to legend, her child was named Leeds Devil. This narrative may alternatively be recounted as a young woman encounters a gypsy begging for food. She refused in terror. When she hesitated, the gypsy cursed her. In 1850, the girl had a son after forgetting the curse. However, he became wicked and fled into the woods. Another classic anecdote has Mr. John Vliet of Vienna, New Jersey, entertaining his children in October 1830 with a mask he made, a mask-covered, horrific face. It became an annual event for the town. Late in October, when kids and adults donned horrific costumes, it grew increasingly popular. Countless demon tales exist. He has multiple identities. Satan causes droughts, agricultural failure, and milk production stops. Treetops fell and streams boiled. He killed all the livestock. Some expected the devil to come annually. Some say he foresaw disaster and war. Famous personalities and government leaders claim to have seen the creature. Businessmen, postal workers, and police officers saw and heard the creature's cries in the snow. This move from legend introduces the devil to regional culture. Early 19th century American naval hero Commodore Stephen Decatur. He allegedly saw his cannonballs made at Hanover Mill Works. A firing range visitor saw a flying object flapping its wings. His cannonball smacked it straight in the face. The beast flew unscathed. Former Spanish monarch Joseph Bonaparte, brother of Napoleon Bonaparte, purportedly met Satan. He went game hunting in Bordentown, New Jersey, in the woods. Legend has it that Captain Kidd hid money in Barnegat Bay. He allegedly killed a soldier to protect his secret wealth forever. According to folklore, the headless pirate and the Jersey Devil became great friends and regularly walked the Atlantic shore and marshes at night. In Clayton, New Jersey, a squad tracked the devil to the forest's edge. The demon ran into the woods. The posse paused and asked, "If you're the devil, rattle your chains." They were too terrified to pursue him. Devil discretionary deceit. He had pleasure at sea with a mermaid in 1870. Apparently, he had ham and egg breakfast with Republican Judge French. However, the devil is not known for his politics. From Bridgeton to Haddonfield in 1859, Gloucester City to Trenton in 1899, and the New York border in 1909, many saw the devil. Before this, devil tales were exclusively told verbally. However, police and media stories of a remarkable week in January 1909 made the devil's story legendary. 30 reports in a week said the devil floated up the Delaware River to Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. Newspaper stories caused panic. Scientists were asked for answers following the 1909 sightings. Legend has it that Smithsonian and Philadelphia scientific experts perceived the devil as a Jurassic creature. Did the beast reach neighboring limestone caverns, a Peleosaurus or pterodactyl? Scientists in New York suspected a marsupial predator. The Fissiped may have died out. The Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia has no records of the Jersey Devils, living or dead. Hunting has started. Robert D. Carson, Philadelphia Zoo Superintendent, offered $10,000 for the devil's capture. Nobody has claimed the prize. Animal trainers at the Philadelphia Arch Street Museum had a different idea. Made from a green-striped kangaroo with false wings, he was dubbed the Devil, used for promotion. The Sandy Hill crane theory arose later. The crane is 4 feet tall and weighs over 15 pounds. Its wingspan may exceed 80 inches. Its flying gyrations and cornering aggression are well known. Like Gothic gargoyles, the devil's form is human devilish. After Ben Franklin published a fake witchcraft trial in Burlington County in the Pennsylvania Gazette in 1735, folks began talking about demons. Scientific and religious ideas sometimes clashed with popular beliefs. Devil stories become gentler as you get north in New Jersey. The devil was well known for never hurting anybody or breaking any laws. Veterans of the Vietnam War say the devil depicts military opponents. The Loch Ness Monster, Abominable Snowman, and Devil have been likened. The 1973 film The Legend of Boggy Hollow made him famous. Berlin-based Cosmic Comics said in 1996 that they based their character J.D. on the Jersey Devil, a diligent environmentalist and truth seeker. Southern New Jersey has grown rapidly since the iron ore business started. Much more paper and glass were manufactured. Fort Dix and McGuire Air Force Base are military facilities. New Jersey and Atlantic City coastal areas are popular tourist attractions. This growth and development, together with a well-lit roadway system, have reduced devil sightings. But the Jersey Devil's legend will live on. Exorcism, electrocution, gunshot, incineration, and other treatments officially render him dead and dumb. Legend has it that the New Jersey Devil became the state's demon in 1939. When I was a boy, I was never threatened with the bogeyman. We were threatened with the Jersey Devil morning, noon, and night, remarked twice Governor Walter Edge. Sightings and rumors will likely endure, at least until the Jersey Devil emerges from the Pine Barrens fog to tell his story. As far as tourist destinations go, cemeteries aren't exactly at the top of most people's lists. Over in Paris, France, in Père Lachaise Cemetery, you can see the water. You can understand why people are so curious about the place. It is the final resting place of many famous people, including rock star Jim Morrison of The Doors, writer Oscar Wilde, composer Frédéric Chopin, and French national treasure Edith Piaf, among many others. But there is another American Southern cemetery, Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia, that is just as magnificent as the one in Paris, and a true marvel in its own right. Natural Cathedral is one way to characterize this stunning cemetery on the 17-mile-long Wilmington River, which is located about 3 miles outside of downtown Savannah. The many ornate and weathered monuments dot this cemetery, which is bordered by huge, stately live oak trees draped in Spanish moss that provide a spooky shadow along the meandering pathways. During the spring and summer, azaleas and camellias explode with color, providing a welcome contrast to the dreariness of the season. You will sense an emotional upheaval the moment you reach the front gate. The 100 acres of this unique site have moved countless people for countless years. In 1762, John Mulreen, a prominent British loyalist, was the first to buy the property. Authorities in the area confiscated Mr. Mulreen's property and put it up for sale after the American War of Independence ended because anyone who remained loyal to the British Crown were persecuted. The property went through 3 more owners until being formally bought by the city of Savannah in 1907. It is still in the possession of the city today. The land was subsequently designated as a public cemetery by the city. People who are fascinated by the supernatural and hauntings find Bonaventure Cemetery to be the site of many urban legends, as one would expect. The cemetery is greatly indebted to a 1994 book that went on to become a big screen adaptation, and the same goes for the other way around. The novel Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt is a first-person narrative set in the Old South, with a murder investigation set against the background of Savannah. The cover art includes a statue of a girl with 2 little bowls, one in each hand. A little girl named Lorraine Greenman sat for artist Sylvia Shaw Judson, and legend has it that her spirit lingers around the statue. Even though it wasn't crucial to the plot of the book, little Wendy's sudden literary fame caused her to become an idol, and her owners donated the statue to the Telfair Museum of Art in Savannah so that it wouldn't be destroyed. Gracie Watson's, or Little Gracie sculpture, is another well-known example of an item that has inspired imaginative tales. John Walls, an artist, used just a picture to create a marble monument honoring the 6-year-old child who died of pneumonia. Where her father's hotel previously stood, in Johnson Square, has been the site of long-running sightings of a small girl matching her description playing. According to urban mythology, she goes by the name of a seemingly ordinary female in a white dress who mysteriously disappears as soon as you approach her. For some, little Gracie is far from dead. She supposedly screams blood tears if her toys are taken away, so visitors leave them for her to play with, particularly around Christmas. Minerva was Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil features the mysterious voodoo priestess who is really modeled on Valerie Fennell Aiken Bowles, a real-life inhabitant of Savannah. The book immortalizes Bowles, who casts hexes and charms and gathers dirt from cemeteries for her rituals. She has since passed away. As a result, tourists now often bring soil samples from Bonaventure home as mementos. Not even the most renowned Bonaventure inhabitants like Johnny Mercer, a Grammy-winning recording musician from Savannah, or Conrad Aiken, a former American poet laureate, have shown any signs of showing up in first-hand stories. But if you do decide to stop by and hear the faint sounds of Hooray for Hollywood playing in the background, you may want to consider it as a sign. Find other videos we have prepared in the description. In Whittier, Alaska, almost everyone shares a single dwelling. The bulk of Whittier's inhabitants, along with stores, a police station, and even a church, call the Begich Towers condominium home. Outside is seldom necessary for residents. Whittier may be the wettest city in America, so it's handy. Passage Canal is a beautiful harbor, and Whittier is the only town on it. Anchorage is the closest city, situated 60 miles north. Fishing, leisure, and tourism are the primary economic drivers. Small dwellings, charming cottages, and rustic wood cabins could be your first guess for this secluded village situated against a background of breathtaking natural splendor. Not in this place. The population of Whittier is a mere 270, plus more than 220 of them call the same high-rise home. Whittier was already a very small town before the Second World War. It was a frequent entry point for U.S. forces into Alaska when a U.S. military facility was set up there in 1943. Originally known as Camp Sullivan, the site gained significant importance towards the end of WW II and continued to play a pivotal role in the early Cold War era, mainly because of its closeness to Russia. The families of the Army Corps members were housed in two massive apartment complexes. In the beginning, there existed the Begich Towers condominium. The 14-story building, which is known locally as BTI, has flats with 2 and 3 bedrooms that are still occupied today. The Buckner building came in at number 2. Nobody was ever prepared to shell out the astronomical sum needed to remove the asbestos from the structure, so it currently lies abandoned and blanketed with the deadly material. Since BTI now has almost everything the town's inhabitants could ever need, it has essentially become their only residence. The police station and post office are located on the first level. The supermarket is called Cozy Corner. A health clinic, a little store, and a laundry are all there. A portion of the upper level is used by a bed and breakfast. Even BTI has a chapel in its basement. The resources inside the tower aren't the only ones. The town's administration and the local school are connected to BTI by a network of subterranean tubes that originated during the Cold War. At Whittier, you'll never have to leave the elevator to get what you need. The meteorology at the time may provide light on the origins of this self-sufficient indoor colony. A reasonable 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5.1 degrees Celsius, is the average yearly temperature, and even in January, the coldest month, the average is 28.2 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 degree Celsius. There's no polarity. However, the weather in Whittier is quite different, with wind, rain, and snow. After 6 months of precipitation, snowfall sets in. Whittier receives more precipitation than any other U.S. city, with an average of 197.31 inches per year. Despite its small size, it is considered a city. Only unpopulated areas of Hawaii have more rainfall, with Harlow, Hawaii, being the next closest. In addition, gusts of 80 miles per hour or more are not uncommon in the wintertime when winds whip over the mountains from the bay. Both living there and getting there are challenging. The only land-based option is to use a tunnel. The Anton Anderson Memorial Tunnel, after the chief engineer of the Alaska Railroad, is the official name, while the Whittier Tunnel is the more common nickname. It served primarily as a railroad station for quite some time, but it was expanded to include a roadway about the year 2000. The one-lane tunnel is still only open for traffic once per hour and is closed to vehicles after 10:30 p.m. Sleeping in your vehicle is your fate if you fail to find the last entry. What does a female philanthropist have in common with Denver, Colorado, the Titanic, and the city itself? Inside the Molly Brown home in Denver, Colorado, all 3 of them are bound together. Throughout Colorado and the surrounding area, this mansion has played an important role in the past. Legend has it that the home's original owner is rumored to still roam the hallways today. The Molly Brown House Museum is an absolute must-see if you find yourself in Denver. Denver, Colorado is home to this historic home at 1340 Pennsylvania Street. American activist, socialite, and philanthropist Margaret Molly Brown lived at this residence. She was also known as the unsinkable Molly Brown, since she managed to escape the Titanic's wreckage. The museum, housed in a portion of her old home, has displays that pay homage to her life and the history of Victorian Denver, while also advocating for the preservation of this architectural gem. With its 1972 listing, Molly Brown's house became one of the nation's most prominent historic sites. William A. Lang, an architect, built the Molly Brown residence in the 1880s. For the original owners, Isaac and Mary Large, he was able to blend various fashionable styles of the period, including the Queen Anne style. After the Sherman Silver Purchase Act was abolished, the Larges ran into financial problems and had to sell their property. After marrying Molly Brown, James Joseph Brown bought the home in 1894. Since he was unwell, he had Margaret get the deed to the house that he had bought for $30,000. The fact that Margaret and her family were frequent travelers is intriguing. They leased it out since the home was unoccupied. While the governor's residence was undergoing renovations in 1902, Molly Brown graciously invited the home to serve as the governor's residence. Margaret began renting out her property to boarding house guests in 1926 and left the management to her staff. After Molly's death in 1932, the house was put up for sale. In addition to housing males, it served as a settlement for the Jane Addams Hull House and offered flats and rooms for rent. The house's decay reached a point that it was scheduled for destruction in the 1970s. The good news is that historic Denver was able to gather the necessary funding to repair the house thanks to a group of concerned residents. They pieced it together using historical 1910 photos, paint chip analysis, and architectural studies. Molly Tobin grew up in the Missouri town of Hannibal, where her birth name was Margaret. The man she would marry, J.J. Brown, was 12 years her senior. A mining magnate in Colorado, J.J. Brown amassed a considerable fortune. Molly rose to prominence in Denver's elite circles quite fast. She was a kind person, even if some people in society didn't value her modest upbringing. On the Titanic, Molly was a solitary passenger in first class. The ship's first journey was this one. Molly acted as things began to go disastrously wrong that night. Before they could persuade her to board a lifeboat, she helped the sailors carry countless others into them. Once they were out at sea, Molly pleaded with the rescue boat to return to the scene of the accident and look for other victims. Even if Quartermaster Robert Hitchens objected, this took place nevertheless. She was dubbed the Unsinkable by her fellow lifeboat passengers for her heroic deeds and selflessness, and the moniker stuck. Because of this, she became renowned as one of the survivors of the Titanic. Might Molly Brown's home be haunted, considering how joyful her life was? The one sad thing was that her home was let to decay before it was renovated. The reality is that the Molly Brown house has a lot of reports of strange occurrences from both locals and tourists. There have been reports of people smelling pipes sometimes. Supposedly, it's the aroma of the pipe that J.J. Brown enjoyed smoking. This is a strange occurrence since smoking is forbidden at the museum. Other unexplained occurrences have also been reported by museum employees and tour guides. Light bulbs come undone for no apparent reason, they've noticed. Because of this, the museum employees must inspect them and repair them as required. Museum employees have also noticed that the Molly Brown residence has had its furnishings moved around from time to time. What seems like a lady dressed in Victorian-era attire rearranges the furnishings. There's been further ghostly activity that the museum staff has noticed. Some have reported seeing or feeling family members, including Molly and JJ, around the house. Spots across the home have been noted by other guests and employees to have an unusually chilly sensation. Historic Victorian mansions, like the one housed at the Molly Brown Museum, are known to be haunted. Taking a tour is a great way to see it firsthand while in Denver. Indeed, rumor has it that the Denver region is home to more than one haunted location. In the fall, it's the perfect place for a weekend retreat. Everybody says that Molly Brown was the most incredible lady. She assisted people without hesitation and showed no fear. She married JJ and worked her way through the ranks of elite society, despite the fact that she was born from lower classes. Due to his deteriorating health, JJ Brown had the deed changed to her name after he bought their house. Since Molly Brown and her family often traveled, the mansion was frequently vacant over the years. She chose to lease it out. While the governor's home was being renovated, Molly extended an invitation to him and his family to stay there. Rooms would be available for rent in the mansion, which would eventually serve as a boarding home for males. While a passenger aboard the Titanic, Molly Brown did what is considered her most memorable deed. Molly sprung into action as the ship began to go down. She assisted the crew in boarding lifeboats and ensuring the safety of the passengers. The crew had to convince her to board a lifeboat herself before she did it. She insisted on returning to search for other survivors who may be in need of assistance, even after she had boarded a lifeboat. Because of this, she became known as the Unsinkable Molly Brown, a moniker that has remained with her. The house on Pennsylvania Street was well loved by Molly Brown and JJ. Visitors and employees at the museum today have reported several paranormal incidents at the house. The aroma of a pipe is often detected. JJ enjoyed smoking pipes in his leisure time. Some people have mentioned that light bulbs have been removed. There have also been accounts of a lady dressed as a Victorian who allegedly rearranges the household furnishings. Additionally, both guests and employees have reported feeling cold patches and seeing ghostly figures moving around the house. Denver is a great destination since it has so much to offer. Things to do include shopping, art, skiing, and hiking. You should definitely plan a trip to this part of the USA. Take a look at 1340 Pennsylvania Street while you're there. You can find other videos we have prepared in the description. The city of Atlanta, Georgia, is torn between the past and present, between the modern and the traditional. Atlanta, a city that was once a center of racism and white supremacy in the antebellum South, is now home to areas that are 60% black. Home to landmarks like the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Site and the Atlanta History Center, the city stands as a tribute to its significant involvement in both the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. An alternative type of legacy lives on at the notoriously haunted Rhodes Hall. Constructed in 1904 by ardent Southern sympathizers, the imposing Rhodes Hall stands as a monument to the city's troubled history. All of the furnishings and decorations, including some less than attractive artwork, are still there, and the home itself has been mostly unaltered by the passage of time. The most terrifying part is that the original owners supposedly still lurk in the castle-like estate where they died. Rich furniture magnate Amos Giles Rhodes spared no cost in creating the plans for the eternal home he and his wife would share. The sinister-sounding Stone Mountain supplied the granite that Rhodes had his new house fashioned from in the similarly sinister Romanesque revival style. As icing on the cake, Rhodes installed 300 light bulbs around the house, making it seem like a starry citadel. The house is imposing, with its sweeping stone arches, well-manicured landscape, and a tower with windows that seems to have been transported from another time and place. In 1904, Amos and Amanda took up residence in the mansion and wasted no time amassing an impressive collection of rare and pricey furnishings. The inside is adorned with opulent furnishings, including throne-shaped seats with intricate carvings, golden chandeliers, enormous four-poster beds, and a swarm of stone angels standing guard. Worst of all, the Rhodes commissioned a massive stained glass painting that traced the Confederacy's ascent to power. Nathan Bedford Forrest, a former Grand Wizard of the KKK, is shown in the painting, which spans 3 panels. The new house was the dream to Amos and Amanda, who were ecstatic about it. In 1927, Amanda died at home, and in 1928, her husband came home soon after. After their parents passed away, the Rhodes children gave Georgia title to the house. Thousands of people visited the haunted house attraction that was housed at the mansion from 1984 until 1992. They had no idea that what they were experiencing may have really happened. Today, the enormous Peachtree Street estate stands out dramatically against the backdrop of towering business buildings and the whir of hundreds of automobiles zipping by. The preservation of Georgia's architectural heritage is the mission of the Georgia Trust, an organization that has ensured that Rhodes Hall will remain in the state in perpetuity. The mansion, now a protected historic landmark, welcomes guided tours and hosts weddings and other celebrations inside its ancient stone walls, and as some have speculated, the grumpy ghosts of the original proprietors. Evidently, Amos and his wife were so taken with their lofty, fortress-like house that they saw no need to leave. According to urban legend, the elderly couple's souls are said to linger in the ancient, creaking halls of Rhodes Hall even now. The large front doors of the hall have welcomed hundreds of tourists, wedding groups, and tour guides throughout the years, and a good many of them have fled, screaming back the way they came. Rhodes Hall is certainly an impressive historical site, but it is not a place to visit if you are easily frightened. As they aged in their dazzling southern shrine, Amos and the missus spent much of their time alone, watching the world go by. They preferred their own company, that much was certain. The Rhodes clearly do not like visitors, so if this was true in life, it seems to ring much truer in death. Guests and tour guides alike have reported an intense sense of hostility the moment they step foot in Rhodes Hall, as if whatever is hiding there wants them out of there immediately. An exceptionally horrific anecdote is told by one tour guide who worked at Rhodes Hall for a short while before leaving. A late-night behind-the-scenes tour had just concluded when the guide arrived at the hall. Her only desire after a hard day on the job was to get home and spend time with her cat, Mitzi. However, Mitzi would be delayed. As the tour guide was about to leave, she heard a figure stealthily making their way up the rear staircase. She had just seen her final co-workers go, and now she was frozen, her breath caught in her throat. No one else should have been in this area of the building but her. The steps were heavy and gradual, and a third sound, like cane tapping, accompanied them every step of the way. A low, masculine voice started to squawk and yell out, "Get out! Get out!" As the footsteps approached, the tour guide wished and hoped it was all in her head. Her co-workers were being harsh. No one responded when she yelled out to them. Out of nowhere, the horrifying figure of a stooped elderly guy with his cane extended before him and his unruly hair flying in all directions materialized along the dimly lighted wall. Eventually, the deep male voice sounded like it was yelling, "Get out! Get out!" The tour guide, clearly not interested in staying any longer, bolted down the main staircase and out the front door, leaving no trace that she had ever been there. She abruptly left the next day by phone and never came back.
Any Alton resident considers a haunted home. Usually one name comes to mind: the notorious Mcpike Mansion on Albee Street. Since I am not from Alton, I was allowed to question the veracity of the claimed hauntings here. But even as I started to discount the fantastical claims of so-called psychics and the feverish stories of vandals and curiosity seekers, I was inundated with reports of odd meetings at the home. Many of them were from reputable witnesses and ghost hunters who had visited the property hoping to discover anything except ghosts, from persons without any motivation to lie. Their discovery raises another whole other issue, but it was clear from the volume of legends floating around the Mcpike mansion that I could only refer to it as one of the most haunted mansions in Alton. Like many other haunted houses, not many people know the background of this formerly magnificent building. Henry Guest Mcpike had the home erected in 1869. The Mcpike family originated in Scotland, and Henry Mcpike's lineage consists of many Revolutionary War heroes such as Captain Mose Guest Mcpike of New Jersey and Captain James Mcpike, both of whom were at Valley Forge with George Washington. Bringing his sons, John and Richard, James Mcpike arrived west to Kentucky in 1795. Son of John Mcpike, Henry Mcpike arrived to Alton in 1847 as a very young guy. Mcpike immediately became engaged in the Alton economic and political scene, and over a period of years participated in many different firms, working as a real estate agent, box maker, and insurance executive, among other things. He also became presidency of Illinois' oldest horticultural organization. Though he was interested in the abolitionist cause, his political ambitions did not start off rapidly. Early proponent of abolition of slavery, his father had been the publisher of a Whig newspaper. The Whig Party subsequently changed its name to the Republicans under Abraham Lincoln. Nevertheless, Mcpike never pursued political position, even though it was often offered to him. He was asked to serve as deputy provost marshal of the district during the Civil War, which put him in a managerial post inside the War Department. Following this, he was said to have started representing several conferences and with the municipal government. This finally would result in a spell as Alton's mayor from 1887 to 1891. Among the most ornate houses in Alton, the Mcpike Mansion is built in an Italianate Victorian style. Originally constructed on a rural estate of 15 acres, Mcpike referred to as Mount Lookout, it has 16 rooms with a domed wine cellar. Mcpike's passion in all things horticultural helped the estate to be planted with rare trees and shrubs, orchards, flowers, and large vineyards. The proprietor started spreading the Mcpike grape, which gained recognition all throughout the nation. This is without a doubt among the most exquisite residences in the neighborhood. After Henry Mcpike passed away, the Mcpike family resided on the estate for some while. Documents on some of the periods are lacking. While some accounts suggest Paul A. Leichinger bought the house in 1908 and resided there until his death about 1930, others claim they stayed in the residence until around 1936. Leichinger either occupied the home or leased it to renters. The home has since been included on the National Register of Historic Places despite minor date errors, but it has also been included on another, not-so-famous list. The list of the 10 most threatened historic sites in Illinois compiled by the Landmarks Preservation Council of Illinois. The Mcpike Mansion has been deserted and in ruin since the 1950s. The years have not been kind to it. Since then, vandals and the elements have rather seriously damaged the construction. The mansion used to have many marble fireplaces and some really ornate furniture, but all of that was taken during the period it remained vacant. Worse, windows have been shattered, plaster cracked and damaged, flooring have degraded to the point they are unsafe to walk on. Although the house needs repairs badly, the massive cost tag makes this a difficult chore. Roof alone estimates range from over $50,000. Still, some optimism is that the Mcpike Mansion won't become just a relic. Sharon and George Luedtke bid on the home at auction in 1994. They are still working to repair the house and make it into a historical site or bed and breakfast as of right now. Though it has been an uphill fight, they have been working to raise awareness of the home as a historical monument via visits and events. Sharon Luedtke, too, feels the home is haunted. Given the time she has spent in the home, her odd meetings there hold much more weight than the claims of trespassers, so-called psychics and curiosity seekers visiting the place only because it seems haunted. From the terrifying to the utterly ridiculous, there have been hundreds of tales concerning the house. Yet, Sharon's assertions that Paul Leichinger's spirit haunts the property appear most reliable. Among the rare ghosts said to inhabit the site with a genuine historical link is he. 6 weeks or so after purchasing the home, Sharon claims she first encountered Leichinger's spirit. As she was watering some plants on the property, she saw a guy staring out at the front yard from the windows. She felt a shiver, but she remembered the guy who disappeared was sporting a tie and a striped shirt. Sharon has a picture of Paul Leichinger dressed just same. One such ghost in the home is said to be Sharon's domestic helper, Sarah. She was nothing more than a presence with an assumed identity until one day a guy stopped by the home carrying some books he had taken from the Luedke house 17 years before. Sarah Wells was the name scribbled inside one of the volumes. Sharon has been touched, actually hugged, by this ghost since then. Her husband and her have periodically smelled lilac on the 3rd level. As said, this home has been the subject of hundreds of legends. Some people say that a legion of ghosts still haunts it. The primary issue with taking these tales too seriously is that his home was a local, neighborhood haunted house where youngsters would hang out and party years ago. More recently, the assertions of mediums and seekers of attention have further muddied the seas. And while I doubt all of the local tales are accurate, there is more here than first greets the eye. I have had the good fortune to participate in several paranormal investigations at the estate that have left many of us perplexed, and have also seen some video footage from the basement that still begs questions. One study turned up an intriguing incident deserving of discussion. One of the group members felt uneasy in the tiny, confined environment and wanted to go upstairs while the rest of the company was gathering in the wine cellar of the house, a step down below the basement. Another lady followed her upstairs, and shortly the group down below was waiting expectantly for her to come back. A few seconds later, the sound of the second woman's footfall could be heard down the basement stairs and subsequently across the basement floor. Short pauses followed the stairs, then the metal door to the wine cellar opened, dragging over the stone floor as it did.
All are here on our channel. You should see the videos in their whole and comment at the ending of every one of them. The description contains more films that we have available.
There is a home that is located deep into the heartland of Kansas that has gained notoriety because to the paranormal activity and terrifying events that have occurred there. Investigators have been baffled by the Sally House, which is situated in the tiny town of Atchison. Residents have been afraid by the house, while thrill seekers from all over the globe have expressed their fascination with it. There is a horrible story that is hidden inside this apparently ordinary mansion, and it is one that continues to send chills down the spines of anybody who dares to set foot within its haunted hallways. It is thought that the ghost of a little girl called Sally, whose spirit is said to haunt the grounds of the Sally House to this day, is the center of the folklore surrounding them. When she was taken to the mansion in the early 1900s for medical treatment, Sally was only 6 years old, according to the folklore that circulates in the area. In a tragic turn of events, she passed away as a result of an unsuccessful medical treatment, and her soul still remains confined inside the limits of the mansion. The Sally House has been the site of a multitude of terrifying happenings, which have been recorded by both tourists and current inhabitants alike. There have been reports of sightings of a young girl with black eyes that are penetrating, and these sightings are often accompanied by the faint sound of laughing that reverberates through the hallways. Objects move on their own, furniture is rearranged in a manner that defies explanation, and doors crash shut with a power that seems to come from another realm. People who venture to enter the home are believed to be overcome with an unshakable sensation of discomfort, because the air within the house is reported to be heavy and to have an uncomfortable presence. At the Sally House, there have been several reports of experiences with the supernatural that have been recorded. Visitors have informed authorities that they have been scraped, pushed, and even assaulted by a force that cannot be seen. The spiritual energy that is penetrating the home would seem to be the cause of the malfunctioning electronic items and the inexplicable draining of the batteries. These ethereal residents are the only ones who are aware of the secrets that are spoken through the walls by voices and whispers that are disembodied. In an effort to have a better understanding of the nature of the haunting, paranormal investigators and psychics have walked inside the Sally house in quest of answers. A great number of people claim that they have successfully communicated with the spirit of Sally herself, and that they have personally experienced her nefarious and malignant presence. Additionally, there are many who think that the home is haunted by the ghost of an evil creature that is impersonating as Sally. This adds an additional element of ominousness to the already eerie storyline. The Sally home continues to generate a great deal of paranormal activity, despite the fact that countless efforts have been made to exorcise or cleanse the home. As a result of its reputation as one of the most haunted homes in the United States, it has drawn a large number of courageous individuals who are expecting to see something otherworldly. On a regular basis, tours and investigations are carried out by paranormal enthusiasts who are looking to uncover the secrets that are concealed behind its walls. The Sally house is a haunting tribute to the incomprehensible and the unknown, and it stands as a testament by itself. Those who have a fascination with the supernatural continue to be captivated by its creepy atmosphere, experiences that send shivers down their spines, and questions that remain unanswered. Whether you are a believer or a skeptic, the legacy of hauntings that the Sally house has left behind serves as a reminder that there are occasionally forces that are beyond our knowledge, and that transcend the confines of the physical world, leaving us with a feeling of awe, dread, and wonder. The Sally house is waiting for you, and it is prepared to immerse you in a spine-chilling experience that may forever haunt your nightmares. To enter, you must have the courage to do so.